She zooms in the centre of mainland Italy, and the battle may concentrate more on the race for the leader's pink jersey as the road starts to get tougher. The Giro will continue next on OLN. And let's hope the 167 riders in the Giro d'Italia enjoyed their rest day, because now they face up to a very long stage of 222 kilometres. They have already covered more than 500 miles of the in excess of 2,000 miles on this long road to Milan. It's stage 6 today. Welcome back as we continue our coverage. I'm Phil Liggett, joined of course by Sherwen and Bob Roll. Hi again, guys. Well, we're back in the saddle, so too are the riders, as I say, on this very long stage. But let's look back 48 hours, Paul. First of all, Pataki is having a magical start to this tour. Top and tail stage wins so far.
Absolutely, Phil. You know, a very exciting finish for him. He was looking for a win in the pink jersey, and it didn't escape him either. But what a victory for him as well, right ahead of Mario Cipollini. In that lunge for the line, in fact, I think it was the younger man who got the advantage, because it was the lunge, the push of the bicycle, that gave him the win by about 1.5 inches. Absolutely superb. As he crossed the line, he knew he'd got Mario Cipollini into second place. You know, when something goes right as a bike rider and a true champion, you can do almost anything, and you feel completely invincible. And I think that's exactly what Alessandro Pataki is feeling at the moment. And in fact, to coin one of your expressions, Phil, I think he sprouted wings, because, you know, he never was really a great climber, but this year he's getting over the little difficult climbs. Well, who knows what happens when you pull on the Maglia Rosa, Bob. But let's talk about the man who finished second. Is he ever going to get this win? He said, by the way, he hit a hole about 10 metres out.
He hit a little pothole with just a few meters ago, and that was the difference between first and second. It was about the width of a tire, so there is a legitimate beef there that Cipollini had. The main thing is that he lost the wheel of Giovanni Lombardi, his #1 lead-out man, just before Lombardi swings off, the sprint really begins. It was Pataki who found the wheel in the melee towards the finish line. And in the sprinter's hierarchy, it's intimidation as well as speed that dictates who's going to win the bike race. And it seems as if Cipollini's lost a little bit of that fire to dictate exactly how everything is going to transpire in the sprint. Pataki on the wheel of Lombardi, Cipollini on Pataki's wheel. Lombardi leading it out, swings off a little bit too late, and Pataki had enough room to get to the line, and Mario just couldn't quite come around him. I thought that Lombardi maybe should have pulled off a little bit sooner, and Pataki would have had to lead out a little bit further, and that would have been enough for Cipollini to come around. He has the speed, but he hasn't had the luck so far in the sprints.
There's no doubt that things are not quite right in the relationship between Lombardi and Cipollini at the moment, after an incident which happened in Ghent-Wevelgem earlier this year. But they'll sort it out, I'm sure of that. Well, one man who cannot do a thing wrong, of course. He won stage 1, he's won stage 5, he's well in the pink leader's jersey, and here he is, Alessandro Pataki, spraying the crowd with champagne. A dream start. He can't believe it's happening to him. It was beyond his wildest dreams. He leads this race now by those 49 seconds over Stefano Garzelli. These are all the favourites here. Casagrande in a good position, so too the big favourite Gilberto Simoni, 1 minute and 4 seconds back. Looking further down the top 10, well, popping them all up there is Michele Scarponi. There are changes here, because some of the big riders lost 38 seconds when they were delayed by a crash approaching the final kilometre. As so, Marco Pantani gained. He came up the overall classification to a very good 11th. Frigo, Tonkov, Cauchioli and the rest, they all went downhill a little bit, and so too did Aitor Gonzalez. Big loss for him now. He's nearly 1.5 minutes down overall. Well, today we are on the mainland. It's a long way. There's a couple of hills in the middle. It might work out for the sprinters, Paul, but tell us about it.
Well, it should work out for the sprinters, but there are once again 2 reasonably difficult climbs towards the end, and it depends just exactly how the sprinters attack it. It is going to be a very long stage as we return back to the mainland. 222 kilometres for the riders on stage 6 from Maddaloni to Avezzano. The 2 climbs come right towards the end, and then it's a 38-kilometre flat run into the finish line.
Well, thanks, Paul. We're looking now at the 3 men of the day so far. Around about 45, 48 kilometres today. These 3 riders got away. We're around 60 kilometres from the finish at what has been a very fast day of racing, but a maximum lead of over 8.5 minutes has now been slashed down to just under 4 minutes. The riders are Christian Moreno from Alessio and Zabala of Kelme, Baxter a factor. 165 riders you can see now left in the race. That's because early today 2 riders have abandoned, Giuliano Bongiorno, the Argentinian rider from Paneria, and Piotr Przyzial from the CC Polsat teams. That's the first of the Polish riders has gone as well today, both climbing off by the time they got to the only feed of the stage. We've been over the first of the climbs, the Superior, and Zabala was heading up over that ahead of Moreni and Backstead. The gap was down to 3 minutes 50. We're now on the climb here at the Velico di Monte Salviano, which means we're about to pass through the 178 kilometre point on what has been a very rapid day of racing. The peloton more or less riding undisturbed under the escort of the Fassa Bortolo. That's the teammates of the race leader, Alessandro Patacchi. But the average speed is very, very high. 42 kilometres an hour is the overall average after covering 44 kilometres in the second hour of racing. That's the scene set. Sit back with us. When we come back from the break, we'll be with the boys. We'll be talking about live pictures coming to you from the Giro d'Italia.
Sì, ma secondo me il Giro d'Italia è soprattutto tradizione. L'uomo che sa tutto è naturalmente il vecchio Bobchi.
Bindi ha vinto la sua 60ª tappa nel Giro. Proprio qui!
La tradizione sì, d'accordo, ma anche la corsa è grande.
Welcome back. A little bit of rain on the lens of our helicopter camera here as we look down on the main field of the Giro d'Italia. 59 kilometres to go. We're in the town here for the main field of Capistrello, but the 3 leaders are, as you can see now, 4 minutes 5 seconds. They've started to pull away again.
Well, I think it's just because we're in between the 2 climbs. You can see the gap has gone up to 4 minutes and 5 seconds. There's a small amount of flat in between the 3rd and 2nd category climb, and that's probably why the advantage has once again gone to the 3 attackers, Phil. But I think what we're noticing on the front end of the main field is a serious amount of interest coming from Gilberto Simone's Saeco team, and I think they may well be thinking about stirring it up on the next climb of the day, which is followed by a fairly difficult descent into the town of Avezzano, and then we've got this long 38-kilometre route of completely flat roads as we look at the men in the leading group now. This is Christian Moreni, no stranger to weather conditions like this, because it was in weather conditions like this a couple of years ago that in fact he got himself a stage victory at the Giro and the pink jersey as well. Moreni, Zabala and Backstead leading by 4 minutes and 5 seconds, but I have a feeling, Bob, as we get a little bit closer towards this climb, Gilberto Simone seems to be looking for an opportunity today. He's an unbelievable bike rider because this is not his terrain.
No, this isn't his terrain, but if there is a really twisty and torturous descent towards the Finnish town of Avezzano, I'm sure that Simone wants to be in front of the bike race. He's a fantastic descender. We've seen him use all of his skills to win the Giro the year before last. And today is not on paper a good route for him particularly, but you never know. He has his team in the front. Sure, they want to control things a little bit, set it up. There's Mario Cipollini there. Here's the team of Saeco. Sacchi, Spezialetti, Fornaciare, Tonti, Pieri, Cunego. Very good team, fantastic. I think they have enough strength and concentrated effort if Simone gets the jersey at some point to keep him there as long as his legs can hold it, and that might be all the way to Milan, excuse me. In the break, Christian Moreni, 1 minute and 23 seconds down on GC, so with a 4-minute lead, ostensibly he's the virtual leader of the Giro d'Italia right now, but I assure you the Fassa Bortolo team will not let that stand all the way to the finish line, and they'll be sucked up.
Yes, that's right. The minute 23 seconds he was behind at the start of the day, currently well wiped out. This is the result of the first of 2 climbs. We've seen one before we came to air. We're now waiting to go over the second. Zabala in the middle here, getting the victory there for Kelme. Moreni at the back, at the front rather at the moment, and Backstead at the back. And so Moreni, for the first time in many days, we've seen a change in the destiny of the pink jersey. If you're just watching the Giro d'Italia for the first time, it is all a race about time. You've got to gain back the time you've lost on the days which have gone previously, and to do that you must go out on the attack. The stage winner is one competition, The pink jersey is for the race on time for the course. These are the red jerseys of Seiko, and their race favourite and the race favourite is Gilberto Simoni, issuing a warning overnight that he intends to attack tomorrow. Well, we'll see, of course, when we go live with our pictures tomorrow. But right now, Christian Mereni is the race leader on the road. He's no stranger to the pink jersey, by the way. He wore it for 3 days back in the year 2000, Bob.
Yes, in 2000 he went on a raid in a very rainy stage. It had been a bone-dry Giro. All the roads were saturated with oil from the passing vehicles, and when the Giro hit it, there's a couple of kilometers to the Gran Premio of La Montagna, second one of the day, I believe, so these 3 riders will sprint that out. But Mereni did a brilliant descent, swept past all the other riders in the breakaway, got himself a stage win and the pink jersey as race leader of the Giro d'Italia, and that's a true dream come true for all the Italian pros.
I think it's good, Phil, to see Magnus Backstedt at the front end of the professional cycling game as well, because Magnus Backstedt, a former winner of a stage at the Tour de France, is basically now trying to get himself back into the top end of the sport. He's wallowed around for a couple of years, but he certainly is a big, strong bike rider. He's been on the attack a couple of times so far since the start of the Giro, but I think today he's certainly making the organisation of this bike race realise that team factor are a factor.
Absolutely right, and in fact he's had good early season form on this team when he joined them last year, but he didn't run out a great season. But it looks to me as though he's coming in on good form this time around, and he's certainly enjoying the Giro d'Italia, there's no doubt about that. There's Tossato, his arm still bandaged there from the crash just before the Giro started. He was out training when he was in the start town of Lecce, and he had a bit of a tumble. There was a great concern he wouldn't be able to start at all, but clearly he's got over that problem. Here we are now on stage 6. The peloton themselves just keeping tempo. They know once over the top of the climb. They stay in pretty undulating countryside. Francesco Casagrande here, very proud of his 3rd place overall at this early stage of the Tour of Italy. But as I was saying, it still could be a day for the sprinters, even though we stay on the undulations throughout the day. We'll pass through the finishing line with some 24 miles, 38 kilometres to race, so we'll get a chance to see the finish. And I'm sure Cipollini, Robin McEwen, Alessandro Petacchi will be taking special note of the approach, the arrival there, as they go out on the big loop when we expect to see all the attacks. Well, we're looking down on the field, Bob, and they seem quite content with the way things are going right now.
At the moment, but I saw just seconds ago Matteo Tossato sneak off on the left side of the screen there and start to do a little bit of tempo, start to stretch this line out, and there you can see him on the front of the peloton. They want to keep this gap to Moreni's group a little bit closer than it is right now. It's going up, but it's still a long ways to race, and I think we'll see Fausto Bortolo on the front in the finale to keep the pink jersey on the shoulders of Alessandro Petacchi.
Well, watching the peloton go through 2 kilometres to go here, which means that these 3 boys can't be far from the top of the climb now. They must be more than a kilometre ahead still of the bunch at 4:05. That's a good gap. Interesting to see that little Freddy Gonzalez right on the sharp end, because he's in danger here of losing his King of the Mountains, and he won't lose it today, but boys are scoring more than him right now.
Well, other people are picking up some serious points along the road, but he has got a very clear advantage in that competition, Phil. He doesn't have to worry about it today, and I think tomorrow we will see a major consolidation of that competition from Freddy Gonzalez. These guys right now are not very much more than a minute or so from the summit of this climb, and they've done a very good job to actually pull themselves up to 4 minutes 43 seconds advantage. There's the indicator of 500 meters to go, so around about 1 minute and they should be crossing the summit.
So just inside 500 meters to go. And this is the Bala who claimed the last climb, and he's going to have a go for this one, or is he? Mereni's thinking bigger term here. He's trying to hold this group away and become the new leader of the race. I don't think he'll do that, but you never know. They've got 4 minutes at this point as we now pass through 44 kilometres or so to the finishing line. So that's not that far to race. It puts us about 6 or 7 kilometres from seeing the finishing line at Avezzano. No big sprint coming up here. I think they're going to allow Zabala to take it. This looks like we're going to go over the top in the same order as the previous climb, which will be Zabala, Mereni and Backstedt. These boys not particularly interested in the King of the Mountains except Zabala, and he's going to get the maximum points. So that's the same order over the top. Zabala, Mereni, Backstedt. This is only a 3rd category climb, so only the 3 riders over the top get the points on this, so there's nothing to race for from the peloton except to now stick in there and hope that he can start to reduce the gap. Little bit of a plunge off the top of the hills for the time being now as we head down towards Avezzano. There's the peloton. As I say, no points for Freddy Gonzalez here on the climb because there's only the first 3 riders get points in the King of the Mountains competition. So they've got to concentrate now on reducing that gap. We'll get a time check as they come over the top of the climb. It was 4:05. And we're going to take a commercial break. We'll give you that time check if we miss it during the commercial. But there's one thing for sure, Zaballa's won both the climbs today. We'll take a break. Are still on the second climb of the day, Velico di Monte Salviano, and as we speak, they're just about to go over the top. So we'll get a very accurate time check now as to the gap on the 3 escapers. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Well, it was 3 minutes 50 on the previous climb, so they're not exactly rushing at them, but the speed is good. The 3 leaders, Christian Mareni, Constantino Zaballa and Magnus Bagstedt, have set a really good pace today. They've been out front for over 3 hours, Paul, and they've averaged 42 kilometres an hour, about 26 miles an hour.
It's been very fast since the first kilometre, actually. The run-up of all those average speeds are, for the first hour, 27 miles an hour, the second hour, 28 miles an hour, then 26 and 26 miles an hour for the next 2 hours. So it has been very consistent since the start, but those guys have never really got a huge advantage. And in fact, the maximum advantage they got was 8 minutes 23 seconds. They did increase their lead during in between these 2 mountains that we're looking at the moment, but I think the main field are now starting to organise the chase in earnest. We're over the summit of this final 3rd category climb of the day, the Velico di Monte Salviano. It's a tricky little descent of around about 4 kilometres, and the rider will get a chance to see the finishing line for the first time. And it is actually rather a tricky finishing line for the sprinters to get themselves organised. There are 2 corners in the last 1.5 kilometres of racing, and it will be a very fast sprint because in fact it's 600 metres downhill to the line. Not a steep downhill, but not really, I would think, Bob, the kind of advantage for Mario Cipollini, who likes to sprint with power rather than sheer speed.
He likes to have a little bit of an uphill false flat drag to the finish lines, and he can use his power to get an advantage over his rivals. He would use any advantage he could find. He hasn't won any stages in the Giro so far, and that's been the biggest news. All the GC contenders pretty close together at the top of the leaders board. However, there were some gaps in the peloton the day before yesterday in the last stage, before the rest day, and Dario Frigo most especially losing some time. That's why it's so critical to stay right in the front of the bike race. It's very difficult to do when you're talking about 3 weeks of racing, but that's what it takes if you're going to win the Giro d'Italia. He lost 7 seconds on the first stage when there was a little gap. It just indicates that maybe the form isn't quite there, not paying as close attention as he should have been, and now Simoni, Garzelli and Casagrande have a little bit of an advantage on them.
I have to say, Garzelli, Bob, he's 2nd overall at the moment. He's a rider who 1 year ago was about to leave this tour in disgrace for taking drugs, and he's back now. Let Paul Sherwen bring us up to date on that one. Paul.
A year can be an awful long time in a life, and even longer in a sportsman's career. 12 months ago, Stefano Garzelli looked set to win the Giro d'Italia for a 2nd time after dominant stage wins at Liège and Limone Piemonte in the first week of the race. Then the bombshell. He'd been declared positive for a retired drug called probenecid, which hasn't been mentioned since the Pedro Delgado affair of the 1980s. Despite claiming innocence, he was ejected from the race and given a 12-month ban. He returned to competition just days before this year's race, looking for a way to prove the innocence he claimed last year. Leaping out of the pack down the slopes of Terme Luigiani reminded us of the form that Garzelli had last year. But for Stefano, it was a statement to all the disbelievers, but he was and is a true champion.
Well, Garzelli trying to wipe away those bad memories of a year ago by riding pretty well at the moment. We're in the town down the bottom here. We're coming off the climb now. We've actually dropped down some 300 metres since the top of the mountain. We're now heading into the finishing town, Avezzano. We'll get a good look at the finish, and then that will leave us a 38-kilometre circuit, more or less plateaued out at around about 600 metres now, as Zaballa brings through the leaders. And as I say, Christian Mareni best placed in this group. He's 1 minute and 23 seconds behind Pataki. Well, with a lead now 3 minutes 40, that puts him 2 minutes and 17 seconds to the good. And of course they get a win bonus of 20 seconds, Bob.
Yes, 20 seconds for the win. So if it comes back together, it won't be a problem for Pataki to keep his jersey, assuming he doesn't get dropped. That's probably the sketchiest feed I've seen in a very long time.
That's
Dead
an
flat
extra
road. That's 40 Ks to go, 38 Ks to go, and I guarantee you the peloton is going to come raging through there. And one thing we did see before the finale, a couple of pretty hard corners there, so it might be a bit of a tricky sprint.
Well, let me just explain that quickly, Bob. The riders have come in and crossed the finishing line, but that's not the way they will actually finish, because they come from straight on. The final 600 metres are straight, and it's a left-hand bend into the finishing circuit, and there they took a right-hander. They're out now on the 38-kilometre route out into the country. And this feed, by the way, that you're talking about, in fact, it's Moreni at the back there just dropping his bottle. It was sort of an illicit feed organised by some very well-organised bike racing teams there. They knew they had an opportunity to hand up bottles, and they take every possibility they can to ease the pressure on the riders having to go back to the cars to keep themselves topped up, Phil.
Yes, the original feed was out on the course. By feed, we talk about where the riders pass through at high speed and snatch these little bags full of food and keep on going. And if you do what Moreni did and drop them, then you're in big trouble, because of course you're going to go hungry, or in Moreni's case, probably thirsty, for the last 24 miles of today's stage. The clock is counting down. The leaders have passed through the finishing line, but as Paul has said, they've got a loop now before they come back to contest the actual finish of the race. We'll give you the up-to-date gap when we come back after this break. Down on the peloton, they are in the streets of Avezzano, and moments ago they passed through the finishing line to face up now to the final 38 kilometres. They hadn't gained anything back on the three leaders. It's still at 3 minutes 40 seconds, but Paul Sherwen's just told me, in fact he's assured me, it'll all change soon.
I think it will, because it's right on my favourite schedule and formula for the main field catching the breakaways. It's about 38 kilometres to go. The time gap is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Bob, a minute every 10 kilometres, that's absolutely perfect for the teams of the sprinters, who today will be held by the team of the leader, Alessandro Patacchi, who could well be riding in the pink jersey for the last time.
Yes, tomorrow there's a huge climb to the finish, and most certainly Patacchi will get dropped at some point during that, and we'll see a new leader in the GC competition. Perhaps Stefano Garzelli, if he finishes with the leaders tomorrow, will inherit the pink jersey again. They did last year, and let's hope he can keep it for a little bit longer. Here's a shot of the breakaway. They don't know exactly how much time they have back to the peloton and who's chasing. What Fossa Bortolo here wants to do is catch them with just a few kilometers to go. That would discourage any other attacks from going up the road, because it'll be so close to the finish that all the sprinters teams will organize a sprint, and it'll come down. I think there was an attack just then from looked like one of the Panaria riders just going up the road there, so maybe the Fossa Bortolo riders have shut it down at the front. They don't want to work too hard, so they still have some energy in order to lead out Patacchi if he's going to go for a stage win.
Well, the thing is now that the pressure is going on at the front, and much more difficult to control the race now as the big teams start to fire. When we came down through the town of Capistrino, I think it was, there was a crash down there, and Giovanni Lombardi was a faller with Galvez of Kelme, two of the big sprinters down. But as far as we know, they got up, they're okay, and they've rejoined the peloton as they came through Avezzano. We had no pictures of that, so we can't show you any. Looking at the teammates now of Alessandro Patacchi, are they doing all this hard work for the last time today? Will they have a new leader on the teams by tomorrow? This is Dario Frigo. Very annoyed yesterday, Paul. One of the men delayed near the end.
Well, in fact, coining a new discussion about whether the international governing body of cycling, the UCI, should change the 1 kilometre rule to the 3 kilometre rule, because over the last few races, in fact, we've seen it quite a lot this year, haven't we, Phil? Tour de Langkawi, a crash by the yellow jersey at 1.2 kilometres to go. Nathan O'Neill on that occasion. A lot of riders yesterday involved in a crash at 1.5 kilometres to go. There is so much pressure on and so many risks being taken by the teams of the sprinters right now that a man crashing at a couple of kilometres to go, who almost certainly would normally finish in the main field, can see his chances of a high place in the overall classification taken away. As yesterday or 2 days ago, Gonzalez and of course Dario Frigo themselves losing some serious time.
Yeah, it is a big problem, and it's one I'm sure the world body will look at, because it came in many years ago when Eddie Merckx had a problem out inside the last kilometre, and they introduced this rule. I think maybe it is time to look at it now, because all the traffic furniture on roads these days is making those last few kilometres highly dangerous. 3:44 is still the gap. I think we can show you now the results of the King of the Mountains we saw. There it is, Zabala getting ahead of Moreni and Bagstedt. So some good points today for Zabala. Maximum points, in fact, on the 2 climbs. So he's going to be up there probably in second place behind Freddy Gonzalez in the green jersey King of the Mountains competition. These three riders, though, holding off well, and when you've got a man like Bagstead, who is a great team time trial rider as an amateur, he rode the World Championships of Sweden, he is a strong boy, and if he's driving, they're going to have a fight to bring them back.
Yes, absolutely, and using some good tactics there on the King of the Mountain sprint. They didn't contest the sprint. It was obvious that Zavea wanted it more than the other two, so they allowed him to go through. He'll have the maximum points in the King of the Mountain competition throughout the day, but he will also contribute to the success of the breakaway throughout the day, as well as Bagstead and Morini, who have perhaps a better chance to win in the sprint. So you always got to maintain at least a modicum of cooperation if a breakaway is going to have a chance to succeed. Those three riders have really worked well together, and they still have a decent lead. This is Lombardi at the back of the bike race, getting some attention from his team doctor there, hanging out of the car on either his bicycle or his body, because he was involved in a little bit of a crash just a few kilometers ago before they came into Avensano for the first time.
81st overall, but he's not interested in his overall standing in this race. He's in this race to help Mario Cipollini try and win a stage, and he needs to be in the thick of the action at the end today, because we all think it'll be a bunch sprint, but they've still got to pick up, of course, those three riders out front, and they're running out of kilometres. They are now 35 kilometres or so from the finish. These are the leaders. They're out in front. The man taking a drink, which he missed on the... Oh, I beg your pardon. This is the main field at the back. Anyway, pens and papers out, because this is the moment when we give you our trivia American to win the Giro d'Italia. Well, no American's going to win it this year, I'm afraid, because we have one Italian who purports occasionally to be American license here in the race, but he doesn't have the quality that Andy showed us a few years back in the 80s. Right, well, we're looking at the pink jersey today, as he's now sixth day in the pink for Alessandro Petacchi. He's the man who won the opening stage and got the race lead. He's not conceded any time that matters over the last 5 days, therefore he keeps his pink jersey. He's the man getting round this course with the lowest possible time right now. But as we speak, we're talking of the Maglia Rosa Virtuelle, the man who is, for the moment at least, the overall leader of this race on the road, and that is Christian Morini, because he's in an escape group of 3 and riding around about 3 minutes and 40 seconds ahead. Robbie McEwen there too. He's actually borrowing the pink jersey, or the Ciclamino jersey this is, because this is for the most consistent daily finisher. It's also owned by Petacchi. If he does lose his pink jersey tomorrow, he'll be in that one, I suspect. McEwen saying he's going to stay on the race till around about stage 13 or so, which is a bit longer than he did last year, and then he'll prepare for the Tour de France. So he's still looking for more stage wins, but there's a massive difference in the points. I mean, there's 57 points difference, with 25 for a win between the top two in that competition. 3:11, so the faster tempo now being enacted by the riders at the sharp end of the bunch, Bob, is having an effect.
3 minutes 11 seconds the lead, about 30 kilometers to go, so they're right on the limit of the 1 minute per 10Ks in the finale of a bike race that a breakaway needs. Magnus Bagsted's 30 kilometers to go. There you have it. A fantastically powerful bike racer, and if you want to have a guy in a breakaway with you, he's one of the best in the business at being able to stay away to the finish. Here's our three leaders right now, Zavea and Morini. Morini, a very cagey bike racer. He's won stages in the Giro before. 30 Ks to go now for the leader, so there you have it. The peloton somehow has been able to leapfrog in a time dimension warp there and get ahead of the breakaway, but now they've been reduced to being behind them. It's 3 minutes and 11 seconds now. When they go through that 30K banner to go to the peloton, we'll be able to see exactly what the time is, and we'll have a very good idea. But Magnus Bagstead, Christian Morini, two of the best guys in the business to have in a breakaway with you. You can see the silver and blue jerseys, very sharp jersey. I think some of the handsomest jerseys in the peloton today, made right here in the United States with me. And Alessandro Petacchi has got a special pair of pink shorts to match his pink jersey today. And I always wondered that Cadel Evans blew up so emphatically on the stage of the Passo Colle and Lesser's Giro d'Italia, because until that point in the bike race, everyone that inherited the pink jersey had a pair of matching pink shorts, and Cadel didn't have that in his kit, nor did Tyler Hamilton, and neither one of them were able to win the jersey. And you saw Paolo Salvadelli with some very sharp matching pink shorts coming up with the win in the Giro d'Italia.
So I think, Phil, what Bob's trying to say is if you want to be a winner, always carry a pair of pink shorts.
All right, Bob. Well, when you go out training later on today, don't forget to put your pink shorts on.
I'll try not to.
Little flick of the left arm there from Zabala. That's the indicator to somebody else to come and push the wind in front. because they reckon if you ride behind the other rider, you're saving about 30% of your energy. So these guys, although they're on opposite rival teams, at this stage of the race they are the common friend. They will help each other to try and hold off the field. Zabala at the back, no wins for him at all since 2001. He won a stage of the Tour of Portugal and also a stage in the Tour de l'Avenir then.
Well, Phil, while the race is actually unfolding as we expect to, there's some pretty sad news overnight for the world of professional cycling. In fact, Rik van Steenbergen, the former great Belgian champion, passed away at the age of 78 after a long battle against cancer. He was 3 times a world champion. He was a brilliant 6-day ride. I think he had 40 6-day wins and something like 270 professional wins on the road. And that's, as the Belgians describe, one of the big 3 has disappeared because they regard the big 3 as Rik van Looy, Eddy Merckx and Van Steenbergen. So I think he will be sadly lost, especially over there in the country of Belgium.
You bet your life. Well, Rick won, as we always knew him as, and in fact the race before the start today had 1 minute silence in his memory because the people of Italy knew all about Rik van Steenbergen. 2 minutes 20 at 30 kilometres to go is the gap, so it is coming down at a nice progressive rate here. Just look at the speed of the bunch now as the big men hunt to shut it down. 1 minute 23, Moreni is holding on to the pink jersey on the road, but he's now inside. He's 57 seconds to the good only, so I think that'll get wiped out pretty shortly now. We could well be treated to a good bunch sprint today, and I wonder if Mario Cipollini can yet get that record, or at least equal it, of Alfredo Binda. If Cipollini were to win today, it would be his 41st stage win since he started riding this event back in 1989, and that would equal the total of stage wins currently held by Alfredo Binda. These are the teammates here in white and blue of the race leader, Alessandro Petacchi. They're being held by the sprinters team here of Domino Vacanzi. That's the team of Cipollini, just taking on a bit more fuel before the finish. And the other team up there too is the team of Robbie McEwen of Australia. That's the Belgian Lotto team, because they have an interest in the sprint finish. Of course they do. Incidentally, we've held off on the Inter-Giro result for you because it's not confirmed, but we do know that Di Biase finished in 4th place behind the 3 leaders, so that's enough to keep him in the sky blue Inter-Giro sprint jerseys again tomorrow. I've just got a glimpse of him down there. That's what reminded me to tell you. As we look at the field now, really concentrating, because it's when the pressure goes on that riders make mistakes and fall off, so you've got to keep your wits about you. We'll take a break, and when we come back, I guess we'll be about 26 kilometres from the finish. These are the hairs. We have just passed through the 25 kilometres to go point here as we watch these live pictures of the Giro d'Italia, and the gap there of 1 minute 50 will shortly get updated, I think, because the clock is running at the bottom of the screen there as the riders themselves approach that 25 kilometre banner, and we're now going to find that already that 150 is going to be wiped out.
Once the main field do turn up the screws, it's amazing how quickly they can wipe away an advantage. The 3 leaders had a maximum advantage of 8 minutes and 23 seconds halfway through the stage, but over the last 10 kilometres the main field really have turned up the heat, and we're now looking at an average speed in the main field of probably pretty close to 35 miles an hour. There are several teams coming to the front right now, and I think Mario Cipollini will be looking to try and get this right today. But I wonder, Bob, you know, he is 36 years of age. He's been a professional since 1989. When Lady Luck sings, and as she is singing for the moment for Alessandro Petacchi, it doesn't look as if it's going to work for Mario Cipollini.
He hasn't had any luck so far in these sprints. We see 3 different teams on the front of the bike race. McEwen's team of Lotto, Cipollini's team of Domino Vacanze, and Petacchi's team of Fossa Bortolo. They're all working to bring the breakaway back, and I think you'll see those 3 riders contesting the sprint. So far on pure speed, I think Robbie McEwen has proved to be the quickest. Petacchi perhaps the most intelligent, astute, and most powerful, and Mario Cipollini just in a world of hurt and bad luck. We would never have believed this, considering his form just 1 year ago when he dominated all of these sprints. His team had no trouble with the lead-outs. Even that looks a little bit shaky, even though those athletes, they shouldn't have any physiological difference from 1 year to the next. Cipollini, now he's been a professional for such a very long time, a little bit of fatigue creeping into the legs, and it is on the limit whether or not he's going to equal this record or break it from Alfredo Binda. I think if he does get the 1 win that he's desperately seeking, that'll give him enough morale and enough fitness to win another one, but it's going to be very hard to win the first one.
Well, you know, the chances of the sprinters are beginning to run out just a little bit. In the Giro d'Italia, there is a little bit of something for everybody, and that's what a lot of these riders have actually been sitting back and waiting for. Well, there are 21 stages in the Giro d'Italia, making up an overall distance of 2,143 miles. 11 of the stages are flat, and then the men that we haven't seen so much of will be thinking about the stages to come, the 3 medium mountain stages, the 5 mountain top finishes, the 5 high mountain stages, and of course 1 or 2 riders will be thinking about the 2 individual time trials, which total 50 miles in length. And that's where we will see that the hierarchy be formed in the Giro d'Italia. Christian Moreni in the red and white jersey of Alessio, a former wearer of the pink jersey a couple of years ago on a very nasty day when I think it was Tossato thought he was going to get the jersey bob, and this young man just nicked away in the final kilometre, got himself the stage win, a time bonus and the pink jersey to boot. Right now he's hoping to survive, but that time gap has come down pretty dramatically over the last 15 kilometres, and I think fairly shortly, Phil, it will all be back in the fold, and we'll get a chance to see whether Super Mario the Lion King can roar once again.
Well, he's about 12 seconds to the good as the Maglierosa Virtuelle at the moment, but judging by his face, it's not going to stay there that long. We're looking at the peloton, the tail end of it in the bottom right. Incidentally, some news overnight for you. It looks like US Postal have continued to strengthen their team with Spanish riders ready for the Tour de France and Lance Armstrong's defence there, because they've signed Manuel Beltran, who this year finished 3rd in the Tour of Aragon, and a rider who has now left the crumbling Team Coast and moved across to US Postal. So that's going to make it a little bit tougher, I think, Paul, for some of the American members of USP to get their ride in the Tour de France.
It'll be very difficult to get a place on the last 9 for US Postal Service to try and help Lance Armstrong win the Tour de France for a 9th time. But also it's rather strange because it would seem that Team Coast is literally imploding at the moment, and there's a scramble for time for Jan Ullrich. As we look here, there seems like there's a scramble for air for Francesco Casagrande. Ullrich is really scrambling to meet the May the 19th deadline of the Society Tour de France. And Bob, this looks like the kind of pictures you used to paint.
Well, this is a new world record for tongue out of the mouth in the Giro d'Italia, and that honor goes to the boxer Francesco Casagrande. See if he can get his tongue back in his mouth, especially when we get to the mountains, and let his legs do a little bit of the talking and not his fists or his tongue. It's, I think, one of the oddest shots I've ever seen in a bike race.
I think he's just demonstrating he's lapping it up at the moment, Bob, because he's 3rd overall in the race and looking, I think, as good as we've ever seen him. We'll find out maybe tomorrow.
Well, he's always been a man threatening to win a big bike race. Let's not forget, on a couple of occasions he has been a big favourite at the start of the Tour de France, and on those occasions he's crashed out. In this bike race he's punched himself out as he did last year, and I would have to say I think this is his biggest chip for victory. We're now looking at 20 kilometres to go. That's around about 25 minutes of racing at these speeds, and I think the next time we get a time check we'll be tickling the 1-minute advantage for these 3 leaders right now. The urgency has returned into their pedalling action. They're hoping to try and survive, but really I think they must realise the writing is on the wall, because as the clock starts to tick there, I think they will get a rather nasty shock next time we get a definitive time check.
Well, if they were to stay away, they would have a breakaway of circa 180 kilometres to say thanks to today, but I don't think they'll stay away, but they're going to give it their best shot. They're still under effort at the front. The clock is running as we watch the main field here now charge towards that 12 miles to go banner. Well, it would be if it was in America, but of course in Europe it's 20 kilometres to go. And it's the men here of Robbie McEwen now helping the drive, those riders in red and white, for the sprinter Robbie McEwen, and also Pasaki's team as well, who's in the pink at the moment. As they approach the 20 kilometres to go, we'll take a break and we'll reveal all when we get back. And welcome back as the peloton here race through the lovely little town of Tasacco now, some 17 kilometres from the finish. The gap is 1 minute and 20 seconds to those 3 riders out in front. This is towards the end now of today's stage of the Giro d'Italia, 222 kilometres in all. 3 riders have dominated the day of racing, but it looks, Paul, as though the escape by Moreni, Zabala and Bagstedt is about to come to an end.
It should come to an end just before we get to around about the 7 or 8 kilometre banner, but this is one thing that bike riders do not appreciate at the end of a very long stage. They study the race Bible meticulously and look at the profiles as we do every night to see what the race route is going to be like, and they have read the race book and it says it's going to be absolutely pan flat for the last 38 kilometres. So I think, Bob, that little climb there just coming through the town here really has made a few legs sting.
Well, they will not be happy to turn the corner and see a hill looming up right in front of them when they're expecting a dead flat road. Wasn't that long, but it still stings the legs bad. See if it's broken up the peloton. They didn't take it at a huge tempo, but you can see the peloton, rather than being grouped up now, because of that climb, is all stretched out in one long line. The Fossa Bortolo riders on the front. Their man, Alessandro Patacchi, has had no trouble whatsoever getting over all the climbs in the Giro so far. And he'll be in the pink jersey there near the front of the peloton. We haven't seen Mario Cipollini coming to the screen yet, though, nor very many of his teammates. He's got one of them at the front of the bike race trying to limit the advantage of the breakaway. And now you can see the rest of the group coming back to the front of the bike race, to the peloton, after that nasty little climb, totally unexpected.
It certainly looks impressive, that long line, doesn't it, with the riders. Tough for the boys at the back. Remember, they've got an awful lot of work to do to concertina this nice tour back into a compact bunch. Incidentally, timing in the Giro d'Italia, you have to get daylight gaps between the cyclists to give them a little high spot on the ridge here down towards the finish. Just look at the speed of that peloton. Now we're going to take a short break. We will not, of course, miss all of the action as we race up towards the finish. We're just 7 kilometers to go. We'll be back by 5. See you in a moment.
It's in your DNA.
Catania and the peloton are all together now. They've swept up all of the breakaways as we head down towards the finish in Catania. Just look who won last time we were here, Paul. Mario Cipollini in '99.
It's always been a great place for the sprinters. In fact, Jean-Paul Van Poppel winning here on 2 occasions, and of course the great trackman Patrick Sercou winning back in 1976. It really does seem right now as if they're trying to get an organisation on the front end of the main field. The team of Mario Cipollini came forward a few moments ago, but in fact it's the Factor team, Bob, who are the ones who are controlling the affairs.
They've just taken over. You would never have seen this last year. You would see Domino Vacanze from 10 Ks out doing the huge train to the finish line. They would never have stood for this. They are trying to get organized. It seemed like it took Mario a little bit of time to get out of the group and onto the wheel and get organized. They're not as dominant as they have been. And here's a big crash. That is a huge crash, and it's exactly what I was talking about in the last segment. And it's so dangerous when they're going that fast. The GC riders want to be in the front. The sprinters want to be in the front. And it looks like one of the Alessio riders are having the worst of it, not back up on his feet yet.
Well, I think Graham Brown is the rider standing there looking at his bike.
Well, there'll be a few guys lose some serious time there, because at this speed, this close to the finish, they will not be getting back. And a quick glimpse there as well. And it looks like De Biasi was one of the riders to go down as well. So it is De Biasi there. He has gone down. He is a man who would have had a serious chance of getting himself up there in the sprint a little bit later on. It was Brett Lancaster, actually, who's gone down, the Australian rider. And on the far side as well, one of the Alessio riders has gone down. Yeah, it could be Moreni. The action all at the front, which is why, as Bob said, you really have to pay attention in the last few kilometres of a stage like this. A crash at 4 kilometres to go can cost you a 30-second or a minute deficit. But Cipollini's men now, Phil, are on the front. Cipollini there up into about 8th position. They've got themselves organised. They really have to get it right for Mario Cipollini today. But look at that, the big long line now. This confusion has been caused by the crash, and those men in the long tail back there will not see the front end of the main peloton again this afternoon.
Boy, that's flying over the roads now. In fact, it's Scott Sunderland, the rider only moments ago I was saying, who's going to sit at the back and watch the sprint. Luckily for him, moved to the front and was driving for his Factor team because he got himself away from that unlucky fall through the town. This is the situation. This is the team, by the way, who are hoping to guide Cipollini. The last man to lead him out will be Lombardi. He is the strong man to lead him up to the line at 2 kilometres to go. It looks, Paul, as though they're getting this one under control. Cipollini sitting there in 5th place.
Well, Cipollini not very happy there. He's at the back end of his tail of riders. Somebody trying to get into his line, and he just unceremoniously pushed them out of the way and said, goodbye, excuse me, this is my men on the front here right now.
I think it's Adriano. I think it's Adriano who's just made a move there on the left of our picture. Yes, it is, but he's seen trouble. Our man for the far south of Italy, who's appeared every day, is trying a little cheeky move.
Well, cheeky move there, but nobody's taking this away from Mario Cipollini at the moment. His men reacted perfectly. Somebody's gone down straight over the side. It's Nadsdorf, the leader of the Inter Giro, straight off the edge of the road there. He was the man who, in fact, was trying to take the wheel of Mario Cipollini. We're inside the last kilometre right now. The zebra train is on the front. Mario Cipollini is about third place.
Well, Nadsdorf has crashed just outside the last kilometre. He will lose time, I'm afraid, because he was not under that red kite. Now, if you fall off, you get the same time. But just look at this. Mario Cipollini is putting himself into a position to win this stage. Can he now equal the record of Alfredo Binda? If he wins, it's win number 41. He still has time in this race to set the record, which I believe will never, ever fall again. They're coming up towards the line now. The train has got it right. Cipollini said before this tour started, this was probably the race he could win on the island, despite the climb in the middle. But watch out, because Pataki is right there in the shadow of Lombardy and is waiting for the sprint here. He's been forced to lead out. Thank you very much, says Big Mario, because now Pataki is going to have to lead out the man he led out for the World Championship. Cipollini got it then. Cipollini is going to... No, I don't think he got it. I don't think he got it.
Very close indeed. Cipollini was coming back slowly. Pataki's got his arms in the air. That's an indication. He knows. A sprinter knows. His eyes are closed as he reaches the finishing line, but he knows from a seventh sense that they develop whether or not he's gone across the line in first place. Cipollini just could not get there, Bob.
Well, another miscue by the Domina Vacanze team. It seemed like Lombardy was leading out way too long for Pataki. I think he should have swung off a little bit further and allowed Pataki to lead out for longer. Cipollini, we're going to have to go to the cameras, I think. That was so desperately close. Cipollini may have gotten it. It might have been Pataki, but Lombardy leading out hard here. Pataki on his wheel. He needs to pull off right about now. He has such a fine balance between leading out to the right point so no one can come from behind Cipollini and giving Pataki a lead out himself. Pataki was very confident in his sprint, led it all the way out to the line, and Cipollini, if he came around, it'll be just by microns. If not, a great sprint by Pataki.
Well, the announcer is saying that Pataki has got it. Let's see if he's right, because we're now looking at Pataki. I thought this was a perfect lead out for the Lion King, but he's not quite on top of his form that we've seen in previous years. Normally, he would have won this stage. Pataki fighting desperately. It's great if you can win in the pink, but he's coming, and he's coming. Now, wait for the line, because it suddenly swings towards Chip. No, I think it's got to go to Pataki. But you know, they passed under that banner. Let's see the photograph from the side, because that's the one that will tell us.
It was all on the lunge, Phil, once again, just as it was.
Sorry if it's not Cipollini, haven't you?
He was coming back nicely there. Now, for one moment, he was actually in the lead, but it was the lunge to the line that I think has actually just given it, and as Bob says, probably by microns, to Alessandro Pataki. Cipollini was perfectly set up here. He's looking at the line. In the past, if you'd shown a finish line to Mario Cipollini like this, nobody would have beaten him. He comes up alongside, and I think at this moment, he probably is just a fraction in front, and it is that lunge for the line that will decide this stage of the Giro d'Italia. But I think Alessandro Pataki, he knows that he's got it.
He knows he's got it, and I think Cipollini, looking at his face there, knows that he's just been pipped again. They're saying it is so. Pataki, the winner of the 5th stage of the Giro. That's not bad, is it? 2 wins in 5 stages, and no other leader of this tour, and will increase his overall lead because of the 22nd win bonus. So Alessandro Pataki closes down this opening week of the Giro d'Italia as the real champion, and will enjoy his rest day tomorrow, because he could not have hoped for a better start to this race. There's the crowd of photographers all trying to get the first words. I've got to feel sorry now for Mario Cipollini. 2 seconds to the same man, and that was his best shot.
That was so desperately close. You got to feel for Mario Cipollini. Put everything into it. His team seemed to rally around him, come together in this stage, and particularly in the finale. But Alessandro Pataki is on the top of his form, having his best season ever. And here's the stage finish, Pataki, Cipollini, and then the new sprinter on the block, Eisel there from the Française des Jeux team, coming up in 3rd place.
Yeah, it's interesting too that Brown lost his lead-out man, Lancaster, in that crash, but still got up there for 6th place, I beg your pardon, right on the back wheel of Robbie McEwen, the winner yesterday. But they did well to keep the nose clean of this one. This was a battle of the 2 great Italians, the new one on the block, when we're talking of age, and the old man trying to get that elusive 41st stage win. And sadly, now let's have a look. This will tell us for sure. Oh dear. Well, there's no doubt about it, is there? But it was ever so close. But I'm afraid Mario Cipollini will leave this opening week of the Giro without a stage win, and still hoping he can conquer a few mountains so he can come back and try and win later in the Tour. Form always changes over a 3-week race, and these miles will be going into the legs of Mario, and let's hope that he will be able to find the sharper legs in the next few days of the Giro d'Italia and come back with that elusive 41st win. Whether he'll get the record out right now is certainly a huge question mark. Anyway, we'll take a short break as we look across the ocean here, and we'll come back for the prize presentation. Was injured after his training crash just before the Giro d'Italia started. As we look now, 42 kilometres still to ride to the finish today. We are riding down the eastern seaboard of the beautiful island here of Sicily. 2:35, the chase is on. The Fassa Bortolo are driving the train. The two leaders are Freddy Gonzalez, the leader of the King of the Mountains, former winner of that competition a couple of years ago, and Ignacio Gutierrez of the Kelme. Getting clear after the only climb of the day, which was the climb of the Portella Mandrazzi, and Gonzalez, the winner there, joining up with a different time for the day. For example, the peloton we're looking at now, if they reach the line like this, they are all given the same time. Now this makes absolute sense, because if a rider at the back was going to be given a time, say a minute difference to the rider at the front, then there would be absolute carnage as they all try to be first over the line, and that wouldn't be at all possible. So if you stay in the peloton, you'll be given the same time for the day, which is added to your overall time for the race so far. And for the man in pink, well, he's covered the race course so far in the shortest possible time.
And I have to say, Phil, this year the referees have been pretty adamant in looking at the photo finishes as well and giving time gaps when they've appeared on certain occasions in the past in the Giro d'Italia. We've seen the gaps coming across the line, but this year on a number of stages they've actually given the exact time when there has been a split in the main field. The three leaders here right now, though, you can see they're inside of the 1 minute advantage, and they're coming up to 15 kilometres to go. Very shortly, I would think they will be back in the fold, and that indication we had of the main peloton, that big long line, just shows, Bob, the speed that everyone is cruising along at.
Well, they are taking this finale seriously. They're really going hard after this breakaway and towards the finish line.
So the peloton is in full flight, and they're an angry bunch of riders when they want to be, as they're now working hard to haul back in 3 escapers of the day. They've had a tremendous day of racing out there. They've won all of the prizes along the road, the Inter-Giro Sprint and the 2 mountains, but I don't think they're going to win the $3,500 for the stage win. We'll take one more break, and when you come back, I reckon we might just be back in time for the catch. See you in a moment. And welcome back to the final stages of the Giro d'Italia today. A long stage of 222 kilometres. Our 3 men are still clear, Mareni, Zabala and Bagstedt, but as you can see now, by a rapidly descending time gap. All eyes will turn shortly on that man in that rainbow jersey, which signifies he is the world champion, the only man entitled to wear that jersey during the current year, and the man behind him in the pink jersey, signifying he leads this race with the lowest time overall, and that's Pataki. They're certain to clash, I think, in this sprint finish. 45 seconds the lead then. They're living in hope now. A wing and a prayer, I think, is a better term, Bob.
Yes, a wing and a prayer is better. 45 seconds, that should be swept up just a few kilometers before the finish, maybe 5 or 6 Ks to go. The peloton's starting to set up the sprint for their team man. We've seen the Lotto team on the front, and the Domina Vacanze team on the front, and of course the Fassa Bortolo boys on the front of the peloton for their fast men McEwen, Cipollini and Pataki. I think we'll see Graham Brown near the front of affairs today in the sprint, as well as Angelo Furlan of the Alessio team. He's had a rider in the breakaway throughout the day. The team hasn't been obliged to do anything. They haven't given a great lead out for Furlan so far, but that's been done by the Domina Vacanze team around Mario Cipollini's team, occasionally in Mario Cipollini, but he hasn't been able to come around that man in the pink jersey, Alessandro Pataki or Robbie McEwen. It's going to be a real battle to the finish line today. Should be a very exciting sprint.
I'll tell you one thing, Phil, you can see all of the sprinters taking this stage very seriously indeed. They're all moving forward, moving their men into a position to be in the top 15 right now. Robbie McEwen was just moving up the outside on the left there. Mario Cipollini looks very much at ease in the middle in his world champion's position, and this is the position that they don't really want to be in at the back end of the main field. As you get closer to the finish, it is so difficult to move forward, especially when you know that the speeds we're experiencing right now are very much in excess of 50 kilometres an hour. But it's rather strange to see that over the last couple of days there have been 1 or 2 of Mario Cipollini's super dominating team, Phil, have been at the back end of the pack.
Well, there's the story of the stage winners so far. We've had 5 stages in the Giro, 2 to Pataki and 1 each to McEwen, Baldato and Garzelli. Really, you could say they're all sprinters one way or another, but Garzelli himself is also a man for the overall. He won this race a couple of years ago, so he can climb as well. These 3 riders, though, now just trying to hang on for the day's spoils. At 10 kilometres to go, the clock starts now. And at one stage today, of course, Christian Moreni had recovered all of his time lost over the previous 5 days of racing and was the race leader on the road. Those dreams have gone as the clock now counts them down. They are desperately trying to hang on, and we are 6 miles from the finish.
10 kilometres, there's the banner for the main field charging through. We'll get a very accurate time check now, and it again has come down quite dramatically, 25 seconds. Bob, it's almost impossible to stay off the front unless there is a massive pile-up that blocks the road for about 10 minutes.
Yes, that would be hard to imagine. Also, all the GC contenders would have to be caught behind that, and then the chase would stop as they tried to bring their leaders back into the peloton. I doubt that's going to happen today. Interestingly, that's the Vini Caldirola team of Stefano Gazzarli that's on. There's an attack now. You never know
That's
what
Backstead
might do in a breakaway. So strong after pulling all day, to be capable of an attack like that in the closing kilometers is very impressive. This is the maximum publicity that Facta could expect without winning the stage or having the pink jersey today. So Magnus Backstead out on the attack now. I think that Christian Moreni might be a little bit upset about that. And here's a replay of the attack. Not really absolutely essential to do something like this, but to get a little bit extra publicity, perhaps that's why he's done that. Also, the other riders, if they get caught by the peloton and the peloton shuts down the tempo, he might have a chance to stay away, but I seriously doubt that. We're going to get a little bit of graphic on the Team Factor rider, Magnus Backstead.
Well, Backstead, let's not forget, in his amateur days was the Swedish time trial champion on 4 occasions, and he's also been an extremely good rider at junior level. And he was 4th with his team for Sweden in the team time trial back in 1994. So he's a good man when he's released on his own. He uses all that muscle power he possesses. He doesn't like the mountains too much, but he certainly likes the flatter roads. A good move, because if they pick up 2, there's always the chance they might have forgotten number 3.
Well, it's only really a question of delaying tactics unless he has become suddenly Magnus Maximus, because he really is, I think, going to crack a little bit towards the end here, Phil. He's just got himself a 20 metres advantage over the 2 men that were with him for an awful long time this afternoon. And as he gets closer to town, I'm absolutely certain he's going to get pulled in, because the sprinters want their day. As for the next couple of days, it's going to be pretty difficult, isn't it, Bob, just cruising up the middle of Italy right through the Apennines.
Oh yes, they're getting into the big climbs of the Giro starting tomorrow with the huge climb up to Terminilio. It's a good tactic. What we saw from the peloton, the whole Saeco team on the front of the bike race, the team director in the car loves to see that heads-up riding. Same with the Vini Caldirola riders. They'll be taking care of their bosses, Simoni and Garzelli, keeping them out of trouble. A lot of nervousness now in the GC contenders, because a few of them have lost time during the run-ins to the finish line, most especially Dario Frigo, who has great legs, seems to be very strong, but now he's a minute plus behind on GC, so that's not good for the Fossa Bortolo leader there.
So we're looking at a selection of pictures here. The leader top left, the 2 in between, the peloton top right. They're all inside 8 kilometres to go as we're heading now down towards the town of Avezzano for the 2nd time today, but this time the finish will be for real. They are hanging on in there. Backstead himself has just gone through 7 kilometres to go. But you know, it might be a few kilometres too far even yet. We'll take just a short break and rejoin us for all of the action as Magnus Backstead of Sweden tries to hold off the men in the Giro d'Italia today. It's a big question mark on that. We have just got inside 5 kilometres to go, and it looks like cramp, but the flag has gone up. It's all surrender. Magnus Backstead, the last to be swept up. The field are now all together as we rejoin the action here, 4 kilometres from the finish.
I'll tell you what, Bob, that is really a fine example of boom, boom, and out go the lights, isn't it? Because he was hammering along 1 minute, and the next minute there was nothing left, as if somebody had just switched the lights off, and he was back in the main peloton.
The lights went out of that breakaway almost instantaneously. simultaneously. He looked down the road, he saw the charging peloton, then he remembered he was so full of lactic acid he could hardly pedal, and I'd be surprised if Baxter could hold the wheels of the sprinters as they come into the final. They're very, very dodgy. A lot of riders leaning on each other. They know it's the last chance for a while for a sprinter to win a stage, so they all want to be up there.
Look at this as well, Phil. There's the pink jersey. He knows which wheel he wants to follow here this afternoon. He wants to follow the wheel of a Super Mario Cipollini. It's Robbie McEwen's team on the front with a bit of help coming from Team Factor. That's Scott Sunderland up into second position there. Mario Cipollini's team still haven't taken over the pacemaking at the front end, and I would think if they're going to try and set up Mario this afternoon, they will have to do that in the next kilometre or so.
Well, seeing Scott Sunderland in second place there, Paul, he's enjoying his first big multi-day tour since 1999, when the Australian was almost killed in an accident in the Amstel Gold Race, a one-day classic in Holland. He was hit by one of the team cars behind, and it kept him out for an awful long time. But he's back, and he's riding the race, and he's right there in the centre of our picture right now. We're heading to Avezzano. Has only been there twice before for the finish, and Franco Cocchioli was the winner there once, and Andreas Kappers, the German sprinter, also got a stage there back in 1988. So the people of Avezzano are going to be treated to a rare visit by the Giro d'Italia today. Will it be down in history as the place where Mario Cipollini gets stage win number 41?
He's not completely organised right now. His team are moving forward there. Alessandro Patacchi there in the pink jersey is in an ideal position, but Cipollini, Bob, is making hard work of riding right up through the middle of the pack, trying to find the tail of his zebra-clad boys.
He lost the train there. It's incredible with 3 kilometers to go to think that Mario Cipollini would not be able to follow his team through the peloton. Riders going up around the sides and coming back through the middle. Cipollini having a very hard time to find his lead-out train there. So far it's not going well for him. And you also see the Francais de Joux riders mixing it in the front for their new sprinter on the block, Bernard Eisel. There's Cipollini now finally on his team, are surrounded by Patacchi's men as well as his Domino Vacanze team. Now this is firing just right, the zebra train on the front of the bike race.
2.5 kilometres to go. Secchiari on the front. One of the riders from FDG just getting in the middle there, trying to send it up. That's Carlos da Cruz. They're thinking about their man Eisel. The zebra train right now looking over their shoulder. They want to know the position of Mario Cipollini, and there he is. He's got himself right up there in front of Patacchi. Patacchi in the pink jersey, and then there'll be a big scramble to get into the slipstream of those two riders. Graham Brown, Robbie McEwen, and the rest will be looking to try and get themselves into the action. 2 kilometres to go right now. This is an ideal launch pad for Mario Cipollini. Lombardi there right in front of him. Today he has to get it right, Phil. 40 career stage wins. We're making an awful lot about this equaling the record, because I think you said the other day, if Mario Cipollini can equal this record, I don't think this is the sort of record that will ever get beaten again in modern day cycling.
No, I absolutely agree, but he's got trouble on his back wheel again. That Da Cruz has swung out there and gone to the back. Patacchi is already locked on to Mario Cipollini in that white jersey of world champion. Galvez Lopez, who crashed, is sitting in there in the slipstream as well. That's Graham Brown down there, and I'm looking now for the Ciclamino jersey of the Demon sprinter from Queensland, Robbie McEwen. No sign of him yet, but the train looks to me as though they can't be blamed for not delivering Cipollini into the finish today, because they are firing on all cylinders for him.
Well, he's got 3 men left now, and the next banner they will see will be 1 kilometre to go. This is an ideal lead out on the front here. It's Ongarato. That will be then, I think, followed by Mondini. Then it's going to be the man who comes up, Lombardi, there inside 1,000 metres. The acceleration has caused a split at the front end of the main field. The zebra train of Mario Cipollini, Phil, are trying to set him up to perfection this afternoon. They really want to get it right for Cipollini. Patacchi is in the best position. Coming upside Patacchi there is Galvez, the Kelme rider. Watch out for him. Graham Brown is on the back end of this train. Zverada is scrambling to come up, but they've actually, with the speed of acceleration they've put in here, split off the front end of the main field.
This is a huge gap. We know nothing of any crash, but they've got a timed gap there as the riders go into that gap. But this is the perfect lead out now. But Patacchi has wheel number 4, and now Cipollini knows it. He's looked over his shoulder, and watch out for Graham Brown in that orange jersey too, because he can deliver a real killer blow in a sprint like this. Whether he's got the legs left now, the boys have got it very right this time. Lombardi now giving it his best shot, and Galvez is coming as well. Cipollini is out of it. He's let them go for it. Patacchi again, as he comes to the line. Can Pataki make it 3? Yes, he can. Unbelievable. Now, Cipollini could not say he hadn't got the best chance of his race to win that.
That was the most superb lead-out that team has done for him. Everything was to absolute and utter perfection, and I cannot for the life of me, Bob, understand what went wrong. All he had to do was take over. I think he tried to stamp on the pedals, and there was just nothing there.
It didn't seem like there was anything left in Cipollini's legs. He just gave up the ghost in the final meters. Galvez Lopez jumping first, coming around in a shot, and then Pataki following him on the other side of the road was able to come around Galvez Lopez of the Kelme team, and there is our pink jersey, Pataki, but Cipollini just did not have it in the legs in the final meters of this sprint, and I don't think this record is going to be broken at this point unless he can get his morale back together. The team was perfect. Benatti just before Lombardi, all the way down to with about 150 meters to go, and Cipollini unable to even sprint at that point. It was a brutal, fast finish, and Pataki taking the stage.
I mean, they went so fast, Bob. It is a possibility that they actually asphyxiated him, and he really wasn't able to accelerate out of their wheel. Let's have a look at that one more time. Cipollini battling to get himself the ideal position. Pataki knew which wheel he wanted to follow, and so, of course, did Galvez, and it was the wheel of the man in the pink jersey, Alessandro Pataki, and with that win, again extending his lead in the overall classification by a further 20 seconds. And I tell you what, Phil, he may well ride himself a very impressive race when we come to the big climb of the Terminillo, because he's extended his lead right now to a very interesting 49-59 seconds over Stefano Garzelli.
Well, yes, I mean, absolutely. In fact, he's got a 20-second bonus. He'll be 1 minute and 9 seconds in the lead now, and that, you know, might well keep him in the pink jersey tomorrow in the race, because although it's a harder stage, he's now got a nice buffer over some of the big names in this race. He will not believe what is going on here. He just cannot do a thing wrong. We've had 6 stages of the Tour. He's won 3 of them, bringing his lifetime total of stages to 5, but now he's worn this pink jersey since day 1. It is all happening just so perfectly for him, and as Cipollini said yesterday, Pataki, everything is going right for him, but for Cipollini, he admits he hasn't got the great form, he just can't do it. Look at this again now, Lombardi giving it tremendous kick at the front here, but look at the face of Cipollini. When he got out of the saddle, he knew there was nothing in those legs, and he immediately sat up. It looked as though Galvez was going to win this for Kelme, but when you're in the pink and you're as inspired as Alessandro Pataki and you're an Italian racing on home ground, I guess you find the extra kick for the line that means victory. All Cipollini can do there is watch another chance at win number 41 slip away from him. Very sad in many, many ways, but for this rider, boy, he's having an unbelievable tour.
And Phil, did you see the face there on Giovanni Lombardi when he looked across and saw that Mario Cipollini could not accelerate? It was one that I think tonight Mario Cipollini is the man who's going to have to eat humble pie and apologise to the team, because they did absolutely nothing wrong today. They were superb. They were the best lead-out team in the business, and unfortunately Mario Cipollini just could not finish it off. Just watch this here. You see Giovanni Lombardi in the middle looking down to see what is happening behind him. All he's really seeing is the shadows, and when he looks round, he can see and sense right now that Mario Cipollini is not going to come by. Look at the face on him. He just knows that he's been beaten. They've done it right. Cipollini, I think, is going to have a hard time getting over the next few stages and the big mountains that are approaching in the Giro d'Italia. I think he may well take the fast train to Milano.
He might be on the next train home, especially after they go up to Terminillo tomorrow. Great sprint by Pataki. Lopez is having a very good season as well, and he did a good little sprint himself. Not a lot of fast field sprinters come out of Spain, but Itzat Galvez Lopez, one of the fastest ever, very quick. Coming around now, sprinting right past Lombardi, Pataki on the other side of the road, and it was Pataki all the way to the line, and Mario Cipollini he went for it, he put his nose out in the wind, he looked at his legs for a moment, and there was nothing in them, and he was vanquished emphatically by the best man in the Giro so far, this man right here, Alessandro Pataki.
But I think what it did exaggerate was just how good that team of Mario Cipollini's can be on their day. This is what the overall classification looks like right now. 1 minute and 9 seconds down to Stefano Garzelli in second place. Casagrande at 1:27. Pelizzotti and Simoni making up the top 5. Bo Hamburger still in there in 8th place. That is rather interesting. But the man who everybody thinks will attack like a madman tomorrow is in 5th place there, Gilberto Simoni, Phil.
Well, it's a lovely gap. He's had to work hard to get those gaps. All been done with sprint bonuses, really, but he's doing his job well, and he's hanging on to the pink jersey. Hanging on, not quite the word right now, is it? And looking here further down the classification, a lot of these names will disappear as the mountains come. It's not a big mountainous day tomorrow, but it is a bit harder as the riders continue towards the north. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll show you some of the prize presentations. And guess who won the stage? Alessandro Petacchi. We'll see you in a moment. Well, moments ago, this is what happened on stage 6 of the Giro d'Italia. A sprint win for Alessandro Petacchi, the race leader. With it comes a 20-second win bonus. That comes off his overall time. It now means he leads this race by 1 minute and 9 seconds. And he's taken the victory there over Galvez Lopez, a rider who fell off about 30 kilometres out. So it just shows you if you fall off, and Lombardi did too, you get back and you get up there in the sprint. But the man who didn't get up in the sprint, Paul, was Mario Cipollini. He was right there.
He was right there. He was doing everything that he had to do. It was almost a perfect lead out. But the man who was supposed to finish off wasn't able to do so. And I think today maybe the team were just too good and they actually asphyxiated him, Phil.
Well, Bob, while we wait for the presentations to get underway, I think they're all a bit stunned by the efforts here of Petacchi. But what is wrong with Cipollini? Is he too old, or has he lost his confidence? What's gone wrong?
I think it's all going wrong for Cipollini simultaneously, and it's just incredibly, it's hard to watch him when he was so dominant last year, not to be able to come around his own lead-out man in the finale of a Giro stage. Inconceivable. It's unbelievable.
All right, well, we can get back to the podium now, and we can have a look at Petacchi winning number 3. Now, he's going to get the champagne first. There he is. There's the result for you as well. And in 4th, I think it was Jan Zerada there, 3rd, Paul. I thought it was the Lampre rider coming back into his own today. And here we go with the champers. He's getting used to this. Pity he gives it all away. He could send it round to our hotel. That'd be nice. As Petacchi there. Win number 3 out of a possible 6. It's unbelievable. There's no way this rider came to this tour expecting the sun to shine on him like this. A pink jersey from day 1 and a good lead now, 1 minute and 9 seconds.
A very interesting lead that he's got. In fact, I think when we get the official results, Phil, it might even stretch out a bit further than that, because there were definitely some time gaps in that main field towards the end. I think for him, he really has been unbelievable since the start. He never could have dreamed of it. He is having the start of the Giro d'Italia this year as Mario Cipollini had last year. Absolutely superb the way he's done it. And right now, I think he'll probably have to change over, Phil, and think about the performance of his team, because he's got 2 men in his team who've got a very good chance of winning this bike race. Of course, we've got Dario Frigo a little bit far back for the lead tomorrow, and Aitor Gonzalez.
Well, Aitor Gonzalez, don't forget, yesterday he lost 38 seconds. He started the day 1.5 minutes down. That's a big handicap, even for a mountain climber.
Yes, absolutely. When you consider that Simoni will be attacking, as well as Casagrande and Garzelli, you don't want to start with any time down at all. That's why the first week of the Grand Tours is so desperate. There's a sprint going on, but there's also a battle for position amongst the GC contenders. That's why there's so much chaos at the end of these bike races.
But now, when is Petacchi going to lose his lead, Bob? I mean, he's not going to win the Tour, let's face it, is he?
No, he's not going to win the Tour, and he's going to lose his lead tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give him a call tonight and make sure that he gives up the ghost and takes it nice and easy on the Terminillo climb, and lets the climbers have a little bit of credit as we get into the rest of the Giro.
Bob, I'm enjoying it. At least I'm getting the stage winner right in the calls every day. Let's go back out then, because we can go back out and have a look now at the man in the pink jersey yet again. This will be his 6th consecutive at the end of stage number 6. As I said the other day, he's nearly got enough to give them to the team now. There are 9 riders on the team. By tradition, the race leader will always pass over his pink jerseys to his teammates as a little reward for all the help they give him out on the open highway. So he's got 6, another 3, and each one of them is going to get one of the original pink jerseys of the Giro d'Italia. And Petacchi now building on his overall lead. Tomorrow it is not an exceptionally hard stage, but they don't get any easier now as we continue up the centre here of the mainland of the peninsula, and we'll continue towards Terminillo, and a tough ride this nonetheless from Avezzano. Don't forget, all information comes your way on olntv.com, and that's where you pick up all these maps and all this information. This is the route tomorrow, but the big thing is the finish. It's got to be where the riders come out and throw in their best efforts. One thing we can guarantee tomorrow is that Mario Cipollini will not be winning the stage. So that's it, stage 7 tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. and enjoy the coverage with us. Remember that the Giro d'Italia, in the eyes of many of the race favourites, actually does begin tomorrow, the first of 5 mountaintop finishes. So enjoy it with us. Remember, all information coming to you, as I say, on our website, olntv.com. We're enjoying giving you the coverage. You stay with us. Until tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for Bob Roll, Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye, and enjoy some of these great images from the 2003 Giro d'Italia. Also feel a little bit sad that Magnus Bagstad never made it in the end. If you'd ridden your bike for over 110 miles in the lead, I think you deserve a prize of $3,500. It wasn't to be the case for Magnus Bagstad. See you all tomorrow. Wonder if Marco Pantani will be there. There he is at the moment. Three miles to go. Again, the men of steel will, the sprinters battled out the finish, and again Mario Cipollini was left watching from the wings. He was watching as Pataki won his third stage from a possible 6. He increased his overall lead to more than a minute. Today, though, he may lose his beloved pink jersey as the race finishes on the feared mountain summit of Mount Termilio at 5,495 feet. That's next on OLN. Yes, after 7 days in the Giro d'Italia, more than 600 miles have passed by on the long road to Milan, but none will be as hard as the few miles, 90 in fact, on today's stage, because the riders have their first rendezvous with the high mountains. It's the first of 5 mountaintop finishes. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to our coverage of the Giro d'Italia. I'm Phil Liggett, and joined, of course, by Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll. Well, around dinner time last night in one team hotel at the Formaggi Pinzolo Fiave team, they had a visit from the police, and they checked out the hotel rooms in searches for drugs, and I'm delighted to say they found absolutely nothing, and they've left the scene. So that's very good for the tour. Now, Paul, we're going to talk of new names today, and of course you're going to talk about the big favourite, Gilberto Simoni.
Yeah, you know, we've talked briefly about one or two of these riders over the last 7 days. They've had to sit back and wait for what's going to happen on today's stage, because we're going into a completely different kind of terrain. It's the terrain that Gilberto Simoni loves. He's no stranger at all to victories at the top of mountains in the Giro d'Italia and, of course, at the Vuelta a España. Now I realise that he's only 23 seconds down on Stefano Garzelli, and he today will be looking to do something very special. He's promised, Phil, on this first mountaintop finish to go out and blow the race apart. If he does, he'll be the leader tonight.
Absolutely, but you've mentioned Stefano Garzelli, and Bob, logically he's the next man in the pink, isn't he?
Stefano Garzelli is racing quite well so far in the Giro d'Italia. He's already won a stage, and he's been up there day after day. In last year's Giro d'Italia, he was disgraced the race when he was booted out for positive drug finding while in the pink jersey. He's spent the intervening season in a purgatory of suspension for doping, and he hopes to come back and improve on that obviously disastrous Giro d'Italia last year. He's got great form. He came back at the Giro del Trentino just before the Giro started, and he won the first stage. He's got great form. He's very powerful. The team is totally dedicated to him, and is the only GC contender that's been able to stay up at the front of the bike race throughout the first week of the stage racing and not lost any time to Pataki. He's been in there and even beat Mario Cipollini in the sprint yesterday, which you don't often see a climber up there in the sprint.
So it looks as though he's got great form. We're going to find out today, that's for sure. One man, though, so far has dominated this race. Out of the 6 stages we've seen, he's won 3 of them. That is Alessandro Pataki. He doesn't expect to win the Tour, and he could well expect to lose the lead today, but let's have a look at the overall situation as it was before the riders set off today. Pataki leading by 69 seconds over Garzelli. Another big favourite, Casagrande, is third. The big favourite, Simoni, looking for a minute 32 to take the pink leader's jersey. Looking further down the top 10, there are 1 or 2 strange names still in the mix here. I think the majority of them will fall away on the mountains today. Some will stay in there, I guess. Those who might succeed into the top 10, what about Marco Pantani? A minute 44 and lying in 12th place. Aito Gonzalez has lost time. He's looking for near enough 2 minutes. He won the Tour of Spain last year. Last year's 3rd place finish in Milan, Cauchioli, just over 2 minutes back. And Julio Perez, who last year won the King of the Mountains, well, we think this year he's looking for a high finish in the overall classification. He seems to be not racing for the Mountains prize. So we'll see if he can make it today, Paul, because really this is a stage that suits somebody like Julio.
It suits a lot of riders who've been thinking specifically about this stage, Phil, just for 7 days, sitting in the wings, waiting for the time to come out and take over. Julio Perez is one of those riders, but let's not forget either Marco Pantani, who is riding very high in the overall classification right now. Let's take a look at where the riders will be going from today, though. This is the 7th stage. It's 146 kilometres. The start is at Avezzano, where they finished yesterday, and the ride all the way to Terminillo, which is regarded as Rome's #1 ski resort. It's an interesting profile, too, that the riders face. In the early part of the course, well, there's not really too much to worry about. There is a 2nd category climb, and then towards the end, a small 3rd category, but the action will all happen here in the final 16.1 kilometres ascent to the summit of Terminillo. That's 10 miles of climbing.
Thanks, Paul. A tough finish indeed. Well, as we join the action now on this, the 146-kilometre ride, we are just around 40 kilometres from the end, with, of course, all of the energy in the last 30 kilometres of today's stage. So we've missed none of the action, really. There is a breakaway of 5 on. They've gained about a minute and a half just now, and the best placed rider in that breakaway is Oscar Pozzi. He's 53rd and almost 3 minutes back. There's the list for you in the latest time gap, a minute and 43 seconds. So the riders at the start today, 165 of them on the start line of the 169. Not many dropouts at all so far, most of those that have come through injury, and 14 of the 19 teams still have all 9 men in the race. Paul, weather-wise, it's a perfect day for the race.
Fabulous day for the riders today. Not too much to worry about at all. 72 degrees Fahrenheit in the valleys where we are here, but at the summit of the climb it does drop down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, just a little cooler. Reasonable humidity at 55%, and the wind not really very much to worry about either. 8 miles an hour in a southwesterly direction. But I think, Phil, the most important thing we're seeing so far is, yes, there is a 5-man breakaway off the front that we're looking at just now, but the majority of the work on the front end of the main field is being done by the Seiko squad. They want to set Simoni up for the win.
Routine breakaway so far, Bob?
Well, it's all the guys we've seen in the break throughout the Giro d'Italia. You got Pozzi in there, who's been on the breaks, Backstead, who's been in almost every breakaway, and Elio Lajano and Frattini, all of those guys in the breaks. Today, no different. Hopefully they'll get a big gap, though, before they get to the bottom of the climb.
Well, there we are. You've just seen it, 32 kilometres, in fact, from the finishing line. But of course, the sting in the tail is about 45 minutes of racing coming up the final climb. Average speed getting quicker all of the time. We're now up to 25 miles an hour, 40 kilometres an hour. They started quite slowly at around about 20. There's Pataki back for the bottles. I wonder what that means. We'll take a break. Welcome back to our coverage of the Giro d'Italia. In fact, the ride is not very far away now from the Intergiro sprint, the point on the course each day where they can pick up those small time bonuses of 6 seconds, 4 seconds and 2 seconds. But today, really, for the breakaway, it's not going to do very much for the overall standings in the race. As I said, the best placed man in this breakaway is Oscar Pozzi of the Tenax team, 2 minutes 55 seconds behind the overall race lead. So 6 seconds, if he wins this sprint coming up, isn't going to make much difference.
But it's a good advantage for a man like him. He has ridden well in the Giro d'Italia in the past. We're now for the front end of the main field. We're actually entering into the outskirts of Rieti. We're in the province of Rieti, and this is basically where all of the action will start. There, a quick indication of the main peloton going through 30 kilometers to go. But Bob, there's been a lot of speed in the main field. These guys don't really seem to be getting that much of an advantage before the start of the climb.
Well, Saeco on the front of the peloton leading a real powerful charge for their man Gilberto Simoni. He said in the papers he was going to attack on the bottom of the Terminillo all the way to the top. Casagrande said he would go along with him. So I think it's going to be a real fight all the way to the finish, and we're going to get first indication of our GC battle unfolding today. Finally, the Giro d'Italia is ready to get started.
We're in the streets of Rieti here now, and we're just about 700 meters from the Intergiro sprint, the race for the sky blue jersey. It's a separate competition, nothing to do with the pink jersey. The premier award in the event is the pink jersey, because that means you've won the Tour, you've got around Italy in the shortest possible time, but there are other competitions for other riders to share in the prize money. These 5 riders, the way they're lining up, Paul, I think they might have a sprint for this.
Well, there's prize money on the line each time, and the 6-second bonus may well be something that Pozzi is interested in. He's teeing himself up the back. The Tenax team have made a very good operation today. They've put 2 riders into this move, and here's the attack going for it.
Well, this is Frattini, I think, who shot off the back. He might be Pozzi. They're both pretty similar riders, being chased by Magnus Bagstedt. And I think it is Pozzi who's gone for it. He's best placed, but he's still, as I say, almost 3 minutes behind, 6 seconds on the line. But as Paul has also said, you get a few euros as well. The euros is about equal with the dollar for easy transferring. And the referee here keeping an eye on the sprint. I don't think he'll have any aggravation here, because it looks as though Magnus Bagstedt, who is a pretty good sprinter, is going to take it out. Adriano creeping in there, I think, for 2nd place.
I'm kind of surprised to see these riders fighting so hard for the Intergiro sprint. They must be just in front of the peloton, and they want to get some prizes before they get caught. Otherwise, they would put more energy into the smooth functioning of the breakaway. Bagstedt really putting in an effort to win that sprint. There is money on the line, but I don't know, that doesn't really serve the breakaway that well. The peloton must be charging hard.
Well, when they came into town, they had a time gap of 1 minute and 43. There's a little replay for you. He's a pretty good sprinter, Magnus Bagstedt, for a big rider. He's won a stage of the Tour de France like this, and he's still challenging in this competition because he lies 4th overall, and that could move him right up there into probably 2nd place, Paul, because it's a very complicated competition, but they win for the competition a 30 seconds time bonus, nothing to do with their overall time. It's a separate competition, and that will bring Magnus right up there, probably into 2nd place. The Lampre team below us, here's the lineup for you. Their big leader, the man with the 1 on the end of his number, is Francesco Casagrande. They've already lost 1 rider at the start, which was a blow for them, because he was one of their strong men. And little Piccoli, he crashed into a field very early on and broke 2 ribs and is now out of the race.
Looks like DiBiase got himself up there as well. He's the leader in that competition, needs to get bonuses on every individual sprint. It's a tough competition to go for, Bob, because it is as difficult as it is to try and win the pink jersey, because you have to be competitive at every Intergiro throughout the 3-week bike race.
It's become a very prestigious part of the Giro d'Italia. They give it a lot of attention in the papers and in the media here in Italy, so all the Italian riders really going for it. DiBiase is leading the competition now, and he went for a big sprint on that one too. It looked like he got it on the line. Lampre, in the meantime, doing the tempo in the front of the bike race. Want to keep the breakaway in check, and I think that Casagrande must be feeling good. He's looked very smooth in the Giro d'Italia so far. No fireworks as far as boxing goes. He hasn't tried to assault any of the...
Looking down now at the Giro d'Italia, heading towards his first big rendezvous with the mountains. The 5-man breakaway has moments ago split up, and we've got 2 riders here trying to move clear of the field, Giano and Pozzi. and the gap to the rest of them is 13 seconds. The field is not that far behind, and in fact Mario Cipollini and a few teammates have already slipped off the back of the big pack. Let's have a look at the first result of the day, because it was very early on today, soon after the start. The first mountain climb won by Constantino Zabala from Grishenko and the king of the mountains leader, Freddy Gonzalez. Zabala is closing in on Gonzalez, but Gonzalez, for the moment at least, keeps his overall lead. Well, the mountains are for everybody. The climbers have the great skills. Let's hear more from Paul.
The mountains are for me the most beautiful backdrop that cycling has to offer the public. The rugged nature of the Alps, the Dolomites and the Apennines put into perspective just how big the playing field is in this sport. No one could ever build a stadium to match the glory and natural beauty they offer. It's also here that the legends and stories are created, the crashes, the defeats and the lone escapades of men hoping to steal the glory. It's in the mountains that Marco Pantani has made himself a hero and a household name in Italy. For 7 days now, the climbers have had to shadow box with the sprinters, hiding in the pack, avoiding the danger of the sprints, dreaming of just reaching their playground intact to show off their talents. Stefano Garzelli now expects to enter stage right and take back the pink jersey that he wore 1 year ago. But some of the other climbers too expect to excel here. Gilberto Simoni has always used the mountains to lay down the law, and should he falter, then Francesco Casagrande won't be too far away from the party. Whatever the story, it's the mountains that will have a serious hand in the telling of it.
Well, we're looking now at the peloton. Moments ago, quite literally, they've all reformed and they're all under the control now of the Vini Calderola team of Stefano Garzelli. That's looking a bit ominous, Bob.
The other riders, he has kept to himself. He stayed very calm, cool and collected right at the front of the bike race throughout the stage race so far, and he's only 18 seconds behind Garzelli, who seems to be the most qualified riders besides Pataki so far in the Giro d'Italia to get the next pink jersey.
Well, Phil, I think what's the interesting thing about this Giro d'Italia, we haven't had a time trial yet, and yet all of the big riders have come to the front because they've been so attentive.
I think you're right, and the Garzelli, the most attentive of all, in a perfect springboard position, as we now see the race being led here by Quinziato from the Lampre team, as we go down the ramparts there in Rieti. We'll take a short break. Stay with us for all of the action in today's stage of the Giro d'Italia. See you in a moment. And welcome back, and it looks like Zabala's team are stepping on the pressure right on the front now, as we're 19 kilometres to go and 1 kilometre from the summit of this small climb here at Castelfranco. It's only a third category, so Gonzalez would like to get these points. Only 3 riders count, and Gonzalez has been losing ground these past 2 days now to the riding of Zabala, and as they come off that bend, Zabala overshot it completely. That was not the fault of Gonzalez, and Gonzalez gets the point. Zabala gets over there in second.
I'll tell you what, Phil, you very rarely see bike riders going uphill and round corners at a speed like that. That was nobody's fault at all, was it, Bob? Just really a question of going around that corner much too fast.
Well, Zavalla tried to come around on the outside of that turn now. I think that caught them both by surprise. Fedor Gonzalez barely getting through it himself. Zabala going into the barrier there. He did hang on for second place, and that competition is really heating up. Zavalla trying to get it really right there. You can see a little bit of a replay here. Swinging wide there as he tried to come around, tripoding there like a mountain bike racer in a downhill, putting his foot out so he didn't crash. It's an incredible bit of bike handling by Zavalla to stay up in the bike race. Gonzalez getting the points, but Zavalla, the Kelme rider, getting a second in the sprint.
I don't think he did get second in the sprint because 1 or 2 riders actually came by on the corner while he was just trying to get to stability once again. But Freddy Gonzalez now extending his advantage in the King of the Mountains competition. That was only a third category, but the important thing for Freddy Gonzalez is to keep getting points every time we go over the top of these mountain passes. I think that's Pozzi again, Phil, who was actually pretty close to the front when they started the sprint, and he's trying to take advantage of this small descent. But that is where we are going in the backdrop to the summit of this very long climb, which will come up in just a few moments' time. 16.1 kilometres of ascension. That's 10 miles, and it should take these riders around about 40 minutes of climbing. But it will have a serious effect on the overall classification of the Giro d'Italia today.
I must say, that King of the Mountain sprint, they were racing for 3 points. I mean, they're almost committing suicide there for something that probably will mean nothing in two weeks' time. But nonetheless, it's quite clear that Gonzalez wants to build an early lead in this competition. Now, a couple of days ago, he got himself in this situation where he got away at the top of a climb and he made a run for it. much more significant if he tried the same move today, because he is a climber.
I wonder where Podsy's gone, because we're now looking at Freddie Gonzalez, and I have a funny feeling that looking up the road here, Freddie Gonzalez is leading the bike race, and there was a bit of chaos there. I think he may well have actually gone off the road going around one of those corners, Bob. Do you get the same idea as me?
I have a feeling that somebody crashed in that corner there. They had stopped the cameras.
There he is.
And there he is. You can see he picked himself up off the ground. He either crashed into the side of the road or at least came off of it. He got back up in time to be in the peloton, but when you're out on a breakaway, it seemed like he was taking huge chances through those corners, and he got one wrong and went right off the road, and now he's back in the group. So Freddie Gonzalez is out in the front of the bike race by himself.
Well, let's see what he can make of it. He didn't really want to be out there by himself. He needed a good wheel to follow. Podsy is showing himself to be pretty good. It looks as though Freddie, there he is, coming back into the speed of the peloton. So they're all back together. Podsy, by the way, getting over in second place behind Gonzalez, and Zabaya was given the third place finish on that third category climb. Now let's have a look, see if we can see what happens here. There's the wheel lock, ouch, as he hits the road completely and goes down. Well, it's just as well these were dry roads. Goodness knows where he would have gone had they been wet.
You see riders with an advantage like that certainly willing to take very serious risks on the descent, and basically all that happened there was he put his back wheel on much too hard, locked it up and had to deck it. On the front end of the main field right now, though, it is the team of Stefano Garzelli taking over the pacemaking, because Phil, currently he is the leader on the road, but there's a lot of action to come.
There certainly is, and the big climb now is still to come. Rest assured, the attacks are sure to follow very soon. We'll take another short break. Podsy up and running, so too Zabaya.
Stefano Garzelli putting his men to the front of the bike race now. This race is going to be blown to smithereens in a little bit. You see the Saeco riders also queued up. Here's our pink jersey and race leader off the back now. We thought he would get dropped, maybe not quite so early on this climb, but they are making such a huge tempo. All the sprinters now getting shot out the back, and Alessandro Patacchi, I think we can pretty much be assured, will lose his pink jersey at the end of the day.
Well, I tell you what, I think he knew the writing was on the wall, because earlier in the day we saw him dropping back to the team car to pick up bottles for the rest of his teammates, the men who will now take over the mantle of leader of the Fassa Bortolo team, Dario Frigo and, of course, Aitor Gonzalez. He will have enjoyed his first 7 days in the pink jersey and the 3-stage victories, but now the roles must change, Phil, and he now has to become a domestique. But what a story he has to tell of this year's Giro d'Italia.
He'll have no regrets, I'm quite sure of that. I think that might be the 20 kilometres to go banner down there. There's the stage results as they've gone so far. Patacchi taking 3, McEwen 1, Baldato getting 1 in the advantage of McEwen, and McEwen was declassed for bad sprinting, and Garzelli, the big favourite, taking out stage 3. Yes, it was the 20-kilometre banner, so we're only 12 miles from the finish, but all of the climbs now lie ahead. The road steadily goes up. We'll go over the top of a third category climb very shortly, Castelfranco, and that'll take us on to the lower slopes of the big one, the Terminillo, which will take us up to the summit, and that alone is a 10-mile climb. So as we look down now, it looks very much as though Stefano Garzelli is feeling good today. He's put his team on the front, and by so doing, he's put the race leader in difficulty. There he is. Patacchi could be losing that pink jersey. We'll take a break.
Bike races are won and lost in the mountains, and I was an absolutely pitiful climber. In the Giro one time, a little lady passed me on the way home with a loaf of bread. But since I've retired, I have found the secret to great climbing. It is amazingly simple. I think I'll do some climbing clinics. I hear there's some good money in that.
The quest is almost over, and the finalists are getting set for the historic summit attempt on Everest. We're back this Monday, and the climb to the top of the world is imminent. Join us as we join the climbers for their last-minute preparations. We're live again, May 19th at 10 p.m. only on OLN. We're looking now at the composition here of the leading riders on the road of the Giro d'Italia. As we look down there too at Perez, looks to me, Paul, as though he's lost ground on this group. A little bit of a surprise.
Well, a big surprise, but that very often happens when you try and change a rider from a man capable of taking individual stage wins out on the roads of the Giro d'Italia to actually concentrating on a high place in the overall classification. And I think, Bob, maybe today the pressure has got to him.
I think this climb doesn't suit his talents as well. A real pure climber. This is a very much a power climb. They're making huge tempo in the front of the bike race. It looks like Rumsauce at the front of Simoni right there. And that might be Casagrande, actually, excuse me, a little bit further down the road. Rumsauce, the only Lamprey rider still in the front group. We wouldn't have been able to predict that. But Eddie Mazzolini is making such a huge tempo. He's blown this race to pieces. And Garzelli is on his wheel along with Simoni. And the GC battle is right up in the front of the road. Figueras and Perez from the Panaria team there alongside the dropped riders. It's really a hard tempo today.
Well, it's always very strange when you hit the first big mountain of a race like the 3-week Giro d'Italia. This race, for example, today on the Terminillo is 16.1 kilometers of ascension, 1,600 meters, 5,500 feet. The average gradient today is 7.3%, but it does kick up on certain occasions to around about 12%. Marco Pantani was the man who dominated the mountains in years gone by. Right now, he started the day in 12th place in the overall classification. It's rather easy to criticize him for not riding at the front end of the main field, but I have to say he is riding much better than he did 12 months ago, and I have a funny feeling that he may well do something special in the big mountains to come, Bob.
Well, today it might save my hat. I won't have to eat it at the end of the day because he's severely dropped. Unless he makes a big comeback right now, for the moment, my hat is safe.
Well, we're looking down at the field fragmenting. 9 riders are now on the front, and it is really the work of Vini Calderola who are setting a pace which is destroying big names here. And it so often happens on the first day in the mountains. It is not always a true indicator as to the way the race will go.
Well, it's very different to pedalling action that the riders have to adopt. After all, for the first 6 days, they've been using the big chainring all the time, huge gears, churning around at 45, 50 kilometers an hour. When they come to the first big mountain of a bike race like this, Bob, you have to go to the complete other end of the cluster. And it's a different pedaling action as well, and not every climber can.
Very difficult change in rhythm in the bike race. Physiologically speaking, you go from being flat out, bent down over the bicycle in an aerodynamic tuck. Now you're more upright in a climbing position using much smaller gears and a whole different mass of muscle that you're using. Simoni seems to be one of the most gifted riders now at that change in rhythm. He can go from the flat stages to the time trials to the descents to the climbs in almost the same physiological response to the impetus, and he looks fantastic there in 3rd position.
Well, don't discount the man in 2nd position either, Stefano Garzelli. He's not only won himself a reasonably good stage on the flat part of the Giro d'Italia, he's also a very good man when it comes to these mountain top finishes. The man doing most of the work for him in this group, in fact, is Eddie Mazzolini. And just getting onto the back here, a man who is high in the overall standings as well is the Alessio rider there, Franco Pellizotti. His team leader, Pietro Cacchioli, doesn't seem to have the form that gave him 3rd place overall last year. And looking here at Marco Pantani, he will not give up, this man, as we come to 10 kilometers to go. We will see a change in the overall classification. But, Phil, we still need to see a duel between Gilberto Simoni and, of course, Stefano Garzelli.
Well, we're looking there at Jaroslav Popovic also, the member of the rider who was given the place in the crash on day 2, and the riders complained about him and he got put back in the pack with the rest of them. Well, he's in the leading group now, and he's not looking for seconds here. He's looking for big gains and a high jump up the overall classification. Ukrainian rider, if you catch a glimpse, he wears 127. And also interesting that Pavel Tonkov is the man up here for Lamprey as well, as this race now really is spread out. But you've got to take your hat off to Marco Pantani, because he's still keeping them in his sights as we progress up this mountain climb of the Terminillo. It's a tempo climb, even though it's very steep on good roads, and the riders here have got to keep their heads when they're under pressure and suffering, because the body rhythm will change as they continue to ascend, and that's exactly what Marco Pantani is hoping will happen to him. But watch out for Garzelli. He sits there in 2nd place. He's planning to attack. We'll take a break. Welcome back. The Giro d'Italia is still very much on the slopes here, with 9 kilometers to climb now of the Terminillo climb, the first mountain top finish. And we're looking here now at a group with Marco Pantani. He's still showing a great defiance on this climb. He's keeping the front of the race in his sights.
Well, he's doing a great ride, really, you have to say, Phil, because Marco Pantani expected to ride well in the mountains. He's lost a small amount of time at the moment, but he will not give up at all. This is the leading group of 9 riders we're looking at. An awful lot of work being done there by Eddie Mazzolini. 3rd place going there to Gilberto Simoni. He's got his teammate up there, Sabalicus. and Tonkov riding very well. There is Popovic 127. And just on the back there is Pelizzotti, who is at the start of the day currently lying in 4th position, so he will leap up the overall classification. And I am, as Bob is, rather surprised to see the presence there of Raimundus Rumsas, who was 30th at the start of today.
Rumsas riding great, and we thought we would see Casagrande and perhaps Belli in the front, but it's been Rumsas for the Lampre team that's been in the front of the bike race. All of the damage being wreaked by Eddie Mazzolini so far. When he pulls off, I think the tempo will slow down quite a bit, and we'll see if they keep accelerating in the front. If not, if Simoni and Garzelli start to match each other, I think we could see some of the bike riders that are chasing from behind, like Perez, Pantani, and Casagrande, come back up to the front. Scott Sunderland having a great day on the shoulder of Marco Pantani for the Facta team.
Very impressed with Scott. This is Scott Sunderland's first national tour, major tour of 3 weeks, since he almost died in a crash in the Amstel Gold Race Classic back in 1999. And I wonder what he's thinking to himself, riding alongside that great man Marco Pantani. That's a great show by Scott Sunderland, the Australian. Here he is, he's second in line here behind Pantani. That's Georg Tochnig of Gerolsteiner tucked in on the back there of those 4 riders. Now the team cars are in the gap, so that's bad news for those following, because it means the gaps are opening. It's 9 kilometres here for this group, a little bit less for the leading 9 riders. I'll give you their names very quickly. Marius Sabalauskas of Lithuania for Seiko, Rumsas and Tonkov, they're both the Lampre riders. Popovic is there from Seiko, Simoni and Mazzolini and Garzelli of Vino Calderola, Pelizzotti of Alessio, and Andrea Noe, Paul, a man who always rides well in the Giro d'Italia.
One of those bike riders who has the ability to be completely anonymous, Bob, doesn't he? You never see him. He's always there, though. At the end of the day, when you come to add up the time gaps, he moves himself high up into the overall classification. That's him on the far side right now in the dark Alessio jersey. A nice profile there of Marco Pantani, just indicating how difficult it is and how much you have to suffer to stay in contact with the front end of a bike race in the mountains.
I mean, nobody is immune to the suffering in the bike race, not the lowliest water carriers and not the biggest stars of the sport. Pantani really trying hard to reintegrate into the front of the bike race. He's going to have a hard time. There's 2 Vini Caldirola riders, 2 Saeco riders, and 2 Alessio riders, and Popovic hanging tough there. Former great under-23 rider. Here's Georg Tochnig and Julio Perez. I think they're probably caught in no man's land between the Pantani group and the leaders. If the pace slows down a little bit in the front, they might have a chance to catch back on, but they are really, really racing hard at the front of the bike race.
Well, if they want to do that, they've got a chance halfway up the climb, where there's a 1.5 kilometre section, Phil, which is reasonably flat. It's a false flat, and that's when you can just knock up the gear a little bit, use a slightly larger gear, recuperate from the very vicious start to the climb, and then possibly pull yourself back up into contention. But a lot of work on the front done there by Mazzolini, and looking further down the mountain here, we can see all kinds of damage. This is Aitor Gonzalez, and he's a man we talked seriously about at the start of the tour as a possible winner of the bike race. But looking at his performance, Phil, recently in the Tour of Romandie, I did put a little question mark behind his name as a favourite.
Yes, I think he'll still be thinking consciously for the better performance in the Tour de France or the Tour of Spain. It comes a bit early for him here in Italy, but he has to accept he's on an Italian team now, and they expect results. But Aitor Gonzalez hasn't quite shown us yet that he's come here with an intent to try and win it. This man is going to win a lot of friends today, Marco Pantani. He's suffering, and he is still holding those leaders reasonably so in sight. He's not going to slip too far down the overall classification. He might even gain if he can just hang on in there. They are the leaders, the men at the top setting the pace. As we look here at the man we are expecting to pounce any moment, that is Stefano Garzelli at 8 kilometres to go. He's got his arch rival with him, Gilberto Simoni. Casagrande, we thought, was a top 3 favourite. He has dropped behind, and 2 of his teammates haven't. That's Rumsas and Tonkov. So they might look to change their tactics by the end of this day. As we look down there on the very select group indeed, I think that's Casagrande's group further down the road, and it looks as though he might have Julio Perez with him. There's the face of the man who's trying to come back. Boy, does this race hurt. We'll take a break. And welcome back from the dizzy heights here, the helicopter looking down as the riders toil their way up the Terminillo. 8 kilometres to the finish. Marco Pantani still doing his best to keep those men in sight as 9 riders try to make a run for it.
Well, this is somewhat what we expected, the tempo being set by the Vinnie Calderillo Sidemek team. There in second place is Stefano Garzelli. I'm a bit surprised, though, Bob, for the moment on the way that Gilberto Simoni has been riding, because he's the one who, over the last couple of days, has been all over the press saying, I'm going to blow this race apart. He's being pretty sedate right now.
Well, he still has 8 kilometers for the fireworks to begin from his legs. I'm sure we'll see him attacking. One team that's having a very hard time today is the Fossa Bortolo riders. Perhaps the 6 days in the pink jersey by Pataki has taken a little bit of the strength away from the team. Aitor Gonzalez, one of our pre-race favorites, is really suffering. Nobody from Fossa in the front now with the main GC contenders. We haven't seen Dario Frigo hardly at all. Since the very first slopes of the climb, he was one of the first riders to get dropped. So Gonzalez and Frigo having a very hard day, and I think that Pataki will have to have been given them the main results that they're going to see throughout the rest of the Giro. I think the pink jersey is slipping out of their grasp right now.
A little bit of change of order here as they start to stretch the pace now, because it looks as though Sabalaikis has gone up with Lithuania with Simoni on his back wheel. Tonkov in the orange jersey down there, new team for him this year, CC Polstat, and he's the team leader. Pelazzotti still tucked in on the back.
That
Just
acceleration there, Phil,
Just
putting
about.
Rumses under pressure as well. Rumses and Pelazzotti actually losing a few bike lengths there as the acceleration comes now from Gilberto Simoni. There's the second group on the road. That's Julio Perez trying to keep himself in contention with Tocznik. They're about 25 seconds behind. The next group on the road a little further back will be the group of Marco Pantani, who certainly has not given up anything right now. But this race, first time into the mountains, is certainly starting to look a lot clearer than it has since we started.
Well, Pelazzotti, Bob, he was declared the Italian revelation of 2001. He came into this race last year. He finished 16th overall. He is riding that little bit better.
He had a little bit of an off Giro last year, and his teammate Pietro Calchioli came out of nowhere almost to get third on the podium. But it seems as if Pelazzotti and Noe are carrying the torch in the Giro this year for the Alessio team. Baldato winning a stage when Robbie McEwen took him into the fences. We thought Furlan might win some stages, so Alessio doing quite well to have 2 men in the final breakaway of this stage today.
Well, Sergei Honchar's down there. They ride from the Ukraine on the Dinardi team, so he's normally known as a big time trial rider, doing quite good on the climbs as well. We've lost sight of Julio Perez for the moment, and also Freddy Gonzalez, the leader in the King of the Mountains, and just seemed to disappear completely from our television today. This is the leading group becoming extremely select now. Watch out for this man, Popovic, in the 127 there. He's the secret weapon of the Lambau credit team, and he's being talked about, and he's well known in Italy because this is where he built his name as an amateur.
It was also interesting to look down at the third group on the road there. Charlie Wegelius was in there, the young British rider who was in fact in this bike race really to look after Sergei Honchar, and he was in a group of about 5 riders a little further back. Interesting to note now that Gilberto Simoni's decided he wants to set the tempo that he likes. Now it's quite strange, isn't it, Bob, because every climber has his own tempo, and they get a lot more relaxed if they can have one of their teammates setting the tempo for them on the front. And this is now, I think, becoming much more of a psychological battle between Simoni and Garzelli.
Looks like Pelazzotti has lost the impetus of the front. Also, he's got a little bit of a gap there. See if he can close it now. You can see he's just been dropped there. A little breakup of the picture. Sorry about that. Zabalaitis doing a huge effort right now for Simoni. Simoni sitting on the slipstream there. You can save about 5%, maybe 10% of your effort, even on a climb in a bike race. This is not very steep, and there goes Simoni's move. Garzelli right onto the wheel, being chased hard by Andrea Noe and Pavel Tonkov.
Well, he's made the move which will have taken care of his teammate Sabliaskus. That's got rid of the Lithuanian there, but that was a planned pacemaking move by him. Now Simoni is making his move, and it was a pretty easy counter-attack by Garzelli there. He's come on very simply, and so too has the other rider from Alessio there as well, Noe. Here's the move, here's how it happened. After the pacemaking of his teammates, acceleration. We're around about 7 kilometers from the summit here. Garzelli, no problem at all, Paul, and Noé straight on as well.
Straight on as well, but look at this, the orange jersey of the CC Polsat rider, Tonkov. He too now feeling himself rather comfortably in with the leaders of this Giro d'Italia, and Noé disappearing. The pressure is certainly on now, and it's coming as it was in about a similar stage into the Giro, coming from Gilberto Simoni. Well, thank you very much. I knew how to follow the wheel. I came up to the wheel, but the engine room didn't have enough power, Bob, for Tonkov.
So filled with lactic acid, he's blown right now. And look at Simoni climbing with Garzelli on his wheel. No trouble at all. Out of the saddle, accelerating each time his tempo slows down a little bit. He's deep into the rhythm now. And Garzelli is the only man being able to match the accelerations of Gilberto Simoni, our big pre-race favorite. They're going to pass under the banner here now. See if it's 5 Ks ago. Yes, it is. 5 kilometers to the finish, just over 3 miles. And this, I think, we're going to see a lot of for the rest of the Giro d'Italia. These two racers in the front of the bike race, Noé and Tonkov, trying to close the gap, but I don't know if it's going to be possible with the accelerations to come from Garzelli as we get a little bit closer to the finish. There's Pellizotti a little further down the right. You can see the time gap now. It's 15, 17. It's going to be about 20, 22 seconds when he gets through the 5 Ks ago banner. That's going to be a very hard gap to close, and now they're letting the team cars come through.
Completely difference in style, Phil, of these two riders as well. You see, if you get a chance to look at Stefano Garzelli, how far back he sits over the bottom bracket. He's climbing with an awful lot of power. On the other hand, Simoni is much more of an adept climber. He gets out of the saddle when he feels that the speed is dropping too much. He wants to fight with the bike, pulling on the handlebars, accelerating. But for the moment, I think we're setting ourselves up for a Simoni-Garzelli duel in this year's Giro d'Italia.
Well, they've done exactly what they promised they would do, and that was attack the riders today. Simoni threatened to blow the field apart here on this climb, the Terminillo, and it looks like he's true to his word right now. I don't think he'd be over-surprised that he's got with him Stefano Garzelli. And as we did say at the beginning of our program, Bob, he still looks the next wearer of the pink jersey.
Yes, Garzelli, if he can match Simoni all the way to the line, he has 23 seconds in hand, and that should be enough. If he can just stay with him, doesn't even have to win the stage to get the pink jersey, as long as he can stay with Simoni. Huge accelerations from these two riders who disgraced this race. They wanted revenge, both of them, and they need some redemption now, and it looks like they're getting it right here today, right now on the slopes of the Terminillo climb.
Well, like all of these big mountain stages, it's the next morning when you read the papers and you see the sort of time gaps they've opened on many of the riders that you begin to understand only a handful of men in any big stage race can win this tour. Only a handful of men have got this incredible gift of going up mountains like angels and then racing well in the race against the watch, which of course are the time trials. Remember, there are still 2 long time trials to come in this race. In fact, he finishes with one of them in Milan itself. So you've got to guard your gains jealously throughout the race and watch and don't make a mistake. We're looking gradually down the line here. We're looking at the riders who were in an original group of 9 select men. They've now been split asunder by the attack by Simoni. Only Garzelli could answer it. Tonkov did try, and remember, Tonkov's reputation in this race is fantastic. He's had some wonderful results. I think he's had every position in the top 6 on numerous occasions. He has, of course, won it. One of only 2 Russian cyclists ever to have won the Giro d'Italia. The other one was Evgeny Berzin. 4 kilometers now to the summit for the top 2. Well, there's no more nerves now. You've played your cards. You know you've got to do it. So all the nerves have left the body. It's a question whether the strength stays over those 4 kilometers, I guess.
Well, that's the important thing. We're looking further down the road here. This is Marco Pantani in first position with his teammate here, Sylvester Schmidt. And I have to say, though, rejoining the front 2, Bob, there's been a serious thought gone into the selection of materials being used, because Stefano Garzelli there has opted for a very special pair of wheels today.
Very lightweight wheels made all out of carbon. Also, they're very aerodynamic, very stiff wheels, so your accelerations on a climb like this are instantaneously powered into the road. Simoni, a little bit lighter weight wheel with just a box section, old-fashioned wheel almost, but very light, very stiff as well. Here's Tonkov adjusting his brake. He might be getting a little bit of brake rub there as he puts power into the pedals, and he's been dropped by Noah, who is trying to close the gap, and he can just see our 2 leaders right up in front of him. Great ride by Andrea Noah today.
Well, you know, Andrea Noah has been a rider who has always ridden well in this. In his last 3 Giros, he finished 4th in 2000, 6th in 2001 and 20th last year. And he's trying for the high finish again, but this man is trying for the win for a second time. We'll take a break.